Welcome to this story, where we take a peaceful journey through a quiet village nestled beside a gentle river. As the day transitions from dawn to dusk, every moment is filled with tranquil beauty and the calming rhythms of nature. Villagers go about their routines, tending to gardens, playing by the river's edge, and preparing for the day ahead, while the river continues its steady flow, reflecting the changing sky. The soothing sounds of nature, the rustling leaves, the distant song of birds, and the gentle murmur of the river create a peaceful lullaby that guides the listener into relaxation. With each breath, you are gently carried toward rest, surrounded by the timeless embrace of nature. Through serene mornings and quiet evenings, this story invites you to slow down, unwind, and let go of your worries, offering a serene escape into the calm beauty of the natural world. Welcome to this peaceful journey beside a serene river that flows gently through a quiet village, tucked away from the rush of the modern world. The first light of dawn stretches across the sky, casting soft hues of pink and orange over the landscape. The air is crisp, filled with the earthy scent of damp soil and blooming flowers, while the sound of birds greeting the new day blends harmoniously with the murmur of the flowing river. Along its banks, the tall willow trees dip their graceful branches into the cool, reflective water, their delicate leaves swaying in the breeze, creating ripples that dance slowly across the surface. The village, nestled between the vast fields and dense forests, stirs gently, its inhabitants moving in quiet harmony with the natural rhythms of the world around them. The small stone cottages stand close together, their thatched roofs covered in moss, smoke curling lazily from chimneys as the villagers begin their day. The scent of wood smoke and freshly baked bread mingles in the cool morning air. An elder, her back bent with the weight of years, is seen bent over her garden, her hands moving slowly and steadily as she gathers herbs for the evening meal. Nearby, a group of children, still wrapped in the warmth of sleep, begin to wander barefoot. Along the river's edge, their laughter mingling with the rustle of the wind in the trees. The cool touch of the morning breeze brushes across their faces, and they pause to listen to the sound of the river, its steady flow, a constant presence in the village. It is a world where every moment feels timeless, where the passing of the seasons is marked only by the changes in the landscape, and life unfolds with a quiet, unhurried grace. The river flows on, reflecting the sky and the clouds above, carrying with it the stories of the land and the lives intertwined with its course. As the day deepens, the golden light of the sun spreads gently across the village, casting long shadows over the cobblestone paths and the fields that stretch out into the distance. The villagers move slowly, their actions deliberate, each task taken with mindful care. The sound of footsteps on dirt paths, the soft clatter of wooden tools, and the low murmur of voices create a gentle symphony that fills the air. It is a place where life moves with a measured pace, each moment unfolding like the slow, steady flow of the river itself. The gentle rhythm of the day is a comforting constant, and as the river winds its way past the homes and fields, it seems to carry away the worries of the world, leaving only a sense of peace and stillness in its wake. Time seems to stretch here, uninterrupted by the demands of the outside world, and for those who live in this quiet settlement, each day feels like a gift, a moment to be savored in its simplicity. The sound of the river's current is a lullaby, calming and soothing, and as the light fades, the village settles into a peaceful rhythm. The stars begin to twinkle above, their distant light a reminder of the vastness beyond. Yet here, beneath their watchful gaze, all is calm and safe. The village sleeps beneath a blanket of stars, and the river, ever constant, continues its journey, carrying with it the quiet stories of the land and the lives it sustains. As the early morning mist rises from the river, the first light of day breaks over the horizon, spilling its soft golden glow over the land, gently awakening the village from its peaceful slumber. The air is cool, crisp, and filled with the fresh scent of dew-kissed grass and the earthy aroma of damp soil, a quiet reminder of the constant cycle of life that the river has nurtured for centuries. The river itself moves with steady grace, its surface smooth and glistening as it reflects the awakening sky, the delicate pinks and oranges of the dawn merging with the soft greens of the trees that line its banks. The willows, their long branches, dipping into the water, sway gently with the breeze, creating ripples that dance softly across the river's surface. The world feels still, as if holding its breath in anticipation, while the village slowly stirs to life. Within the cottages, smoke rises from chimneys as fires are stoked to warm the hearths and cook the morning meal. The quiet hum of life fills the air, mothers calling their children, the distant clatter of wooden tools as farmers prepare for their work, and the soft murmur of voices drifting from doorways as the day begins. The small market square at the heart of the village slowly fills with villagers gathering their goods for the day, freshly harvested vegetables, herbs from the gardens, and baskets of eggs. The marketplace is modest, with wooden stalls shaded by broad trees and a well in the center where water is drawn by hand. There is no rush, no hurry in the air. Every movement is deliberate and purposeful, as if time itself flows more slowly. Here, guided by the steady pulse of the river that runs through the village's heart, children wander through the square, barefoot, their laughter rising in the air as they chase one another across the dirt paths. The soft thud of their feet against the earth blends with the rhythmic sound of the river as it murmurs quietly beside them, carrying the secrets of the land. The villagers move in harmony with the natural world, each task undertaken with quiet grace, their actions as steady and unhurried as the current of the river that sustains them. As the sun climbs higher, the light deepens, casting long shadows across the ground and giving everything a golden glow. The village, bathed in the warmth of the morning, feels alive with the pulse of the earth, its inhabitants moving in rhythm with the seasons, their lives marked by the changing of the river's flow. The river, ever present, is both a source of nourishment and a witness to the passage of time, carrying with it the stories of countless generations. It winds its way through the village, flowing past the homes and fields, reflecting the sky above and the world below, its surface rippling with the gentle caress of the breeze. Every so often, a fish breaks the surface, sending a soft splash into the stillness, a reminder of the life that thrives in the depths of the river. The day unfolds slowly, the heat of the sun rising steadily, warming the earth and filling the air with the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass. In the distance, the sound of a wooden wheel turning at the watermill marks the passage of time, the steady pulse of the mill a reminder that life moves forward, even in this quiet corner of the world. But here, in the village by the river, there is no urgency, no rush. Time seems to stretch, each moment unfolding naturally, without pressure, as the villagers move through their day with a peaceful, measured grace. The soft rustling of the leaves in the trees and the gentle splash of water against the banks create a symphony of calm, wrapping the village in a comforting embrace. The day is a simple one, filled with the quiet tasks that sustain life. A man tends to his small garden, his hands steady and sure as he carefully prunes the plants, ensuring that the earth's bounty will continue to feed his family. A woman sits outside her cottage, spinning yarn from the wool of the sheep in her care, her movements fluid and rhythmic, as she works in harmony with the land. Along the riverbank, an older couple walks slowly, their hands clasped together, their footsteps soft on the earth as they enjoy the peaceful beauty of the morning. The river, ever constant, continues its journey, flowing past them and carrying their stories forward, just as it carries the stories of all who have lived beside it. As the sun begins its slow descent in the sky, casting a warm amber glow over the village, the air cools, and a gentle breeze stirs the leaves of the trees, carrying with it the scent of evening. The quiet hum of life in the village fades, replaced by the soft chirp of crickets and the distant call of an owl. The river's flow slows, its surface reflecting the deepening colors of the twilight sky, and the world settles into a peaceful rhythm. The village, wrapped in the stillness of the evening, feels timeless, its heartbeat steady and sure, like the river that continues its endless journey, always moving forward, always steady, carrying with it the memories of the land and the lives it touches. In the quiet of the night, as the moon rises high above, the village rests, wrapped in the warmth of the earth, the river's whispering song lulling all to sleep. As the village begins to settle into the late afternoon, the soft glow of the setting sun filters through the trees that line the riverbank, casting long shadows that stretch lazily across the dirt paths and quiet gardens. The air is rich with the scent of blooming flowers, the earth's fragrant perfume mingling with the faint smoke rising from chimneys as evening fires are lit to warm the cottages. The river, ever steady, reflects the amber and golden hues of the fading light, surface rippling gently as it continues its journey downstream, never pausing, always moving forward. Along the riverbanks, children play quietly, their laughter rising softly into the air, as they chase one another through the tall grasses and wildflowers that grow along the edges. They splash in the shallow water, the sound of their feet pattering against the soft earth, blending with the gentle murmur of the river, the soft rustling of leaves in the trees above, and the distant croak of a frog hiding in the reeds, complete the symphony of peaceful sounds that fill the air, creating a calm, rhythmic backdrop to the quiet evening unfolding in the village. The villagers, having completed their daily tasks, begin to gather in the central square, where a large stone well stands, its cool water drawing a steady stream of villagers who come to fill their buckets and draw water for the evening's needs. The market stalls are slowly closing down, but the warmth of community remains as the villagers linger, chatting quietly with one another, exchanging news, and sharing the simple pleasures of a life lived in harmony with the land and the river. There is no rush, no sense of urgency, only the steady pulse of life that moves in sync with the flow of the river. The older women, gathered in small groups, exchange stories of the past, their voices soft and steady as they reminisce about the days when the village was younger, when the river had yet to carve its deep path through the earth, and when the trees that now shaded the square had been but saplings. Their tales are filled with laughter and nostalgia, carrying with them the wisdom of many years, each story a thread woven into the fabric of the village's history. The younger women, with baskets of herbs and fresh vegetables, listen intently, their faces calm and attentive, as they too seek the knowledge of those who have lived longer and seen more. In the midst of this, the children, still filled with energy and life, run between the elders and the younger villagers, playing games and occasionally pausing to listen to the stories that are being shared. Their innocent questions and giggles add a touch of lightness to the evening, a reminder of the circle of life that continues unbroken as each generation passes down its wisdom to the next. A gentle breeze stirs the air, carrying the sweet scent of the evening's flowers, and with it, the sounds of the night beginning to awaken, the soft chirp of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, and the rustle of animals moving through the underbrush. The village, bathed in the soft light of the moon, feels peaceful, suspended in time, as if the earth itself is breathing slowly, matching the rhythm of the river that flows just beyond. The sounds of the evening gradually blend into a quiet lullaby, the soft murmur of the river, the distant hum of the village, and the gentle rustle of the leaves above, creating a soothing, tranquil atmosphere. The world outside the village is still, the trees standing tall and unmoving against the twilight sky, their dark silhouettes casting long shadows across the fields. The mountains in the distance, once shrouded in mist, now rise clear and imposing. Against the fading light, their peaks dusted with the last traces of sunlight before the night takes over. The villagers, feeling the comfort of the evening's embrace, begin to make their way home. The rhythmic sound of footsteps on the dirt paths fills the air, a steady, calming beat that matches the flow of the river beside them. Each step is deliberate and slow, as if savoring the peace that the evening brings, each person aware of the simplicity and beauty that comes with a life lived in tune with nature. The evening is a time for rest, for reflection, and for quiet moments spent with family and friends. The smell of freshly baked bread rises from the kitchens, mixing with the cool night air and the faint sounds of family gatherings, laughter, quiet conversations, the clinking of wooden utensils drift from the cottages, filling the village with warmth and comfort. As the moon climbs higher in the sky, its pale light casting long silvery shadows across the landscape, the village is bathed in a soft, ethereal glow, and the river continues its steady, unhurried flow, carrying with it the quiet stories of the day. The world, for now, is at peace, its heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of the river that winds through the village, its journey endless, its song constant. As the last of the daylight fades, the village by the river settles into the stillness of night, the steady murmur of the river its only companion, its quiet song a lullaby for those who rest and for those who wait for the new day to begin. As the night deepens, the village remains cradled in the gentle embrace of darkness, each cottage nestled beneath the quiet glow of the moon that hangs high above. The river, now fully illuminated by the soft light, reflects the skies shimmering stars, the smooth surface rippling only occasionally as a fish breaks the surface or the wind stirs the reeds along the water's edge. The air is cool and crisp, carrying with it a faint scent of wildflowers that have begun to bloom in the open fields beyond the village, their delicate fragrance mingling with the earth's damp scent after the evening's dew. The sounds of the village have slowed, with only the soft rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl filling the air, a tranquil lullaby for those who lie awake or wander the quiet streets. The moon casts long, soft shadows across the dirt paths and the stone walls of the cottages, creating an otherworldly glow that seems to stretch the hours of the night into an endless, peaceful stretch of time. Along the river's edge, the tall grasses sway gently, their movements slow and rhythmic, as if in harmony with the quiet music of the night, a dance that only nature truly understands. Above, the sky is dotted with countless stars, their faint twinkle a reminder of the vastness of the universe. Yet here, in this small village by the river, the world feels intimate, enclosed within a circle of peace and serenity. In the distance, the mountains rise dark and still against the night sky, their peaks hidden in the folds of the horizon, as if protecting the village from the unknown beyond. The quiet of the night holds everything in a delicate balance, the perfect stillness interrupted only by the occasional splash of water against the stones in the river, or the low croak of a winging frog that rests in the reeds. It is a time for reflection, for thoughts to drift like leaves carried by the river's current, floating gently away from the worries and stresses of the day. The moonlight stretches across the landscape, bathing the village in its silvery glow, creating a peaceful scene where time seems to slow, each second lasting longer, more tender than the last. It is a moment of tranquility, where the world pauses to rest, and the sounds of nature, become the lullaby that guides all living things. Toward sleep, the houses, though darkened with closed windows and doors, feel alive with the warmth of the families that reside within. The faint smell of cooked meals still lingers in the air, a comforting reminder of the nourishment shared around hearths that have long since dimmed. In the gardens, the shadows of plants stretch across the soil, their leaves reflecting the pale light of the moon, as if they too are resting, their roots firmly grounded in the earth, absorbing the quiet stillness of the night. A slight breeze picks up along the riverbank, rustling the leaves and the trees above, and for a moment it feels as though the earth is breathing, expanding and contracting slowly, as if moving in time with the rhythm of the river itself. The sound of the water gently flowing over smooth stones becomes a soft murmur, a constant companion that will continue its journey through the night and into the dawn, its song unchanged and eternal. As the moon climbs higher, casting a deep, silver light across the landscape, the village and river seem to merge, their boundaries fading into one another, both part of a world that is at peace with itself. The villagers, though asleep in their homes, are all connected by this tranquil scene, each of them a part of the greater whole. As the land, the river, the sky, and the stars weave together in a seamless, quiet tapestry. Beneath the moon's gentle gaze, the village feels secure, protected from the outside world, a place where time moves slowly, where every moment is savored, every breath is measured. It is a world untouched by the rush of modern life, a world where the rhythms of all nature dictate the pace of the day, and the quiet of the night offers rest for both the body and the soul. As the night continues, the moon begins its slow descent toward the horizon, the silver light softening as the sky begins to deepen into darker shades of blue and purple. The river, too, continues its quiet journey, moving steadily and relentlessly toward whatever lies ahead, its course unchanged, its path sure. And in the stillness of the night, the village by the river remains cradled in peace, its heart beating in time with the soft murmur of the water and the gentle sway of the trees as the world outside drifts further away. For now, in this quiet moment, all is well. The night, though vast and unyielding, has become a sanctuary, a space where all things find their place, where every living being is wrapped in the quiet comfort of the earth's embrace. The gentle light of the moon, the soft rustling of the wind, and the steady flow of the river will guide the village through the rest of the night, leading all who rest toward the renewal of sleep and the promise of a new day when the sun will rise again, bringing with it the warmth of light and the soft sounds of a world that continues its unhurried rhythm. Until then, the village will remain still, holding its breath in the quiet peace of the moonlit night, and in the distance, the river will keep its steady song, a lullaby for the land and all who dwell upon it. As the first light of dawn begins to gently break over the village, the world stirs softly from its slumber, bathed in the soft, golden glow of the morning sun that gradually spreads across the landscape. The river, still smooth from the night's stillness, reflects the new light, its surface shimmering with the subtle hues of pink, lavender, and pale blue as the sky transitions from darkness to day. The air, crisp and fresh, carries with it the scent of damp earth, a reminder of the cool night that has passed and the promise of a warm day ahead. The faint fragrance of wildflowers, blooming along the riverbanks and in the fields beyond, mixes with the aroma of fresh grass and the delicate perfume of the night-blooming flowers that still linger in the cool morning air. The birds, having rested through the night, now begin their songs, their melodies rising softly with the warmth of the sun, adding a symphony of sound to the tranquil scene. The village, though still quiet in its early hour, is beginning to come alive as the first light creeps into the cottages, casting long, soft shadows that stretch across the dirt paths. In the distance, the low hum of life begins to stir, with the faint sounds of footsteps on the soft earth, the rustling of leaves as a gentle breeze stirs the trees, and the distant clink of metal as tools are gathered for the day's work. Cool morning mist that rises from the river's surface gradually dissipates, retreating into the earth as the sun's warmth touches the land, and the world begins to awaken fully, stretching into a new day. Along the riverbank, the reeds sway gently in the morning breeze, their tall, slender forms bending softly in rhythm with the flow of the water, while the trees that line the banks seem to stretch their limbs toward the sky, their leaves whispering in the wind as if in quiet conversation with the earth. The village's inhabitants, who have long since grown accustomed to the peaceful rhythm of life by the river, begin their daily routines, each one moving with purpose and a quiet grace that reflects the stillness of the morning. An elder emerges from one of the cottages, her feet bare on the cool earth, and walks slowly to her small garden, where she kneels and begins to tend to the plants with steady hands. The delicate movements of her fingers, brushing over the soft earth and carefully adjusting the young shoots of herbs and vegetables, seem to mirror the slow, deliberate flow of the river, each action a quiet ritual, a testament to the care with which the land is tended. Nearby, a group of women gather near the water's edge, their woven baskets held gently in their arms as they speak in hushed tones, the soft sound of their voices blending harmoniously with the song of the birds, the gentle murmur of the river. Their laughter is light, soft like the morning breeze, and it rises gently into the air before fading into the quiet surroundings. Along the village's central path, children emerge from their homes, rubbing sleep from their eyes as they wander, barefoot toward the river, their small feet leaving soft prints in the moist earth. They laugh and play, their voices rising in the early morning light as they chase one another around the trees, their carefree energy filling the air with a sense of joy and renewal, like the fresh start of the day itself. The men, who have already begun their tasks in the fields, move in measured steps, their figures moving with the steady rhythm of the work that they have known for years. The clinking of tools and the low murmur of voices echo through the village. As the day begins to take shape, and the sun, now higher in the sky, begins to warm the earth, casting long, lazy shadows across the land, the river, though unchanged in its course, seems to reflect the energy of the day as it flows steadily onward, its current strong and purposeful as it carries the promise of life to the far reaches of the land. It moves with quiet dignity, never hurried, never faltering in its path. The village, too, moves with the same steady grace, each person fulfilling their role with the same quiet confidence that has carried the community through generations. The quiet rituals of the morning, from tending to the gardens to gathering herbs, from playing in the fields to preparing for the day's work, seem to echo the timeless rhythms of the earth, a reminder that life moves in cycles, each one as natural as the river's flow. The simplicity of these moments, the stillness of the morning, offers a sense of peace, of calm, that fills the air and settles into the hearts of those who live by the river. It is a moment of connection to the land, to the earth that nourishes and sustains, and to the natural world that moves around them in perfect harmony. The sun, now higher in the sky, casts its golden light across the village, bathing everything in warmth and light, and the day begins in earnest, filled with promise and the quiet expectation of what lies ahead. As the village continues its slow, peaceful rhythm, the river flows on, its steady current carrying it ever forward, its song a lullaby for the land, for the village, and for those who dwell within it. The world, in its quiet simplicity, is at peace, held together by the steady flow of time, the gentle rise of the sun, and the rhythm of the earth that moves beneath their feet. It is a world where the rituals of life unfold naturally, without haste, without worry, a world where each day is a quiet promise, a new beginning, and a fresh start. As the morning stretches on, the village and the river continue their timeless dance, and the inhabitants move forward with the same quiet grace that has defined their lives for generations. The cycle of day and night, of work and rest, of peace and joy continues in its steady rhythm, a rhythm that will carry them through this day, and the next, and the one after that, forever guided by the quiet, enduring flow of the river. As the afternoon sun begins to dip lower in the sky, casting long golden beams across the village and the river, the world seems to slow, entering a peaceful pause before the coming night. The air, once warm from the day's sun, now carries the refreshing coolness of evening, a gentle breeze that stirs the leaves of the trees along the riverbank, causing them to dance with the rhythm of the wind. The river, which has flowed with such steady grace all day, begins to shimmer with the fading light, its surface reflecting the soft hues of the sky as the sun sets behind the distant hills. The shadows lengthen, stretching lazily across the ground, as the first signs of dusk begin to settle over the landscape. The village, too, begins to shift, its inhabitants pausing from their daily routines, taking a moment to breathe in the cool air and feel the transition between day and night. In the gardens, flowers that have bloomed under the sun's watch now seem to close gently, their petals curling inward as though preparing for rest. The scent of fresh earth mingles with the delicate fragrance of evening flowers, a sweet perfume that fills the air, inviting deep, calm breaths. The village, which had been full of activity earlier in the day, now seems quieter, more serene. The sounds of the river, gently lapping against the banks, are joined by the soft rustling of leaves as the wind weaves through the branches, creating a melody that blends with the distant calls of birds settling in for the night. The occasional creak of a wooden door or the soft shuffle of footsteps on the dirt path are the only other sounds that interrupt the tranquility, and even these seem to blend seamlessly into the evening's symphony. As the evening progresses, the villagers begin to gather in small groups around their homes, some sitting on the soft grass, while others stand by the river, watching the water reflect the changing sky. The fishermen, having completed their daily work, now stand together, chatting quietly and watching as the last rays of sunlight paint the river in shades of orange and pink. Their faces, weathered from years of labor, are illuminated by the soft glow of the setting sun, and there is a peaceful contentment in their expressions as they watch the world around them begin to rest. Near the village center, an elder moves slowly through the streets, her hands clasped in front of her as she walks with the steady, deliberate pace that has defined her life. Her eyes, which have seen countless sunsets, now take in the beauty of the evening with a sense of quiet reverence, as though each moment of this peaceful transition is a gift to be savored. The children, who have been playing in the fields all day, now begin to wander back to their homes, their laughter still ringing in the air, but softer now, as the weight of the evening settles over them. They walk with their heads tilted upward, gazing at the stars that are beginning to appear, their small bodies moving in rhythm with the slow, steady cadence of the evening breeze. The village, with all its quiet beauty, seems to breathe with a gentle rhythm, each movement, each sound, falling into place as if guided by some unseen hand. As the sky darkens and the first stars appear, the village begins to grow still. A gentle murmur of the river and the soft rustle of the leaves the only sounds that remain. The lanterns, which had been lit earlier in the evening, now flicker with a soft, golden light, casting long shadows across the stone paths and illuminating the faces of those who sit by their hearths, content and peaceful after another day of quiet labor. The last light of day fades into the horizon, and the stars above become more pronounced, their faint glow filling the sky with a sense of quiet wonder. The moon, rising slowly and gracefully into the sky, bathes the village in its soft silver light, casting long, delicate shadows that stretch across the ground. The air grows cooler still, carrying with it the promise of night, and the village settles deeper into its evening rest, each person finding their place within the rhythm of the land, the river, and the sky. In this stillness, there is a sense of belonging, of being part of something much larger, something eternal that has moved through the ages, carrying with it a quiet heartbeat of the earth. The village, though small, is part of this larger world, connected to the river that flows endlessly onward, to the trees that stretch their limbs toward the sky, and to the stars that shimmer above, each one a distant reminder of the vastness of the universe. The breeze, now cool and calm, carries with it the whispers of the land, of the ancient rhythms that have guided this place for generations. The night, though dark, is full of life, of quiet movement and gentle sounds that speak of the passage of time, of the ever-changing dance between day and night, light and dark. As the moon climbs higher in the sky, its soft light spills over the landscape, casting a peaceful glow over the village and the river. The world, once again, is at rest, its rhythm slow and steady, carried by the wind and the water, the stars and the earth. And in this moment, the village, though small and humble, stands as a testament to the quiet beauty of life, to the rhythms that have carried it through the ages and will continue to carry it into the future. As the last traces of daylight fade completely, the world settles into the peaceful embrace of night, its quiet dance of shadows and light, offering a sense of calm and rest to all who call this place home. As the night deepens and the soft hum of the village fades into the cool silence of the early hours, a sense of timelessness settles over the land. The river, which has flowed steadily throughout the day, continues its unhurried journey, its surface now calm and glassy, reflecting the faint light of the moon as it rises higher in the sky. The soft breeze, which had been carrying the warm scent of the day, now brings with it the crisp coolness of the night, rustling the leaves of the trees that line the riverbank. The once bustling village is now quiet, its sound softened by the stillness of the hour, as though the earth itself is holding its breath in reverence for the peacefulness of the night. The fireflies, which had danced in the twilight, have retreated into the shadows, leaving behind only the soft glow of lanterns hanging from the wooden eaves of the cottages. The quiet rhythm of the river seems to match the heartbeat of the village, its steady flow offering a sense of calm and reassurance to all who live alongside it. The world seems to stretch out in front of the village, vast and endless, as though the passage of time itself has slowed, and the land has become a place where every moment feels eternal. The stars, which had begun their slow ascent earlier, in the evening, are now fully scattered across the sky, their light twinkling faintly against the deep black backdrop. Each star, distant and ancient, tells its own story, a story that stretches back far beyond the memories of any human, yet they remain a constant presence, offering their quiet glow to guide those who seek solace in their light. The moon, too, stands as a quiet sentinel in the sky, its pale light bathing the landscape in a soft, silvery glow. The trees along the river's edge sway gently, their branches moving in rhythm with the breeze, casting long, delicate shadows that stretch across the ground, adding to the sense of calm that envelops the land. The village, nestled quietly in the embrace of the river and the surrounding forest, seems to exist in its own world, a world untouched by the rush of time, where each moment unfolds with peaceful grace. The elders, who have lived through countless seasons, sleep soundly in their homes, knowing that the land will continue to provide for them, just as it has for generations. The children, too, rest quietly, dreaming of the future that lies ahead of them, yet unaware of the timeless cycle that has shaped their world. The young and the old alike are held within the embrace of the night, their lives unfolding within the slow, steady rhythm of the earth. Even the animals, which had been active earlier in the day, have now found their rest. The birds, having sung their final songs for the day, nestle quietly in the trees, their feathers tucked close to their bodies as they sleep. The insects, too, have quieted, their songs fading into the night as they seek shelter from the cool air. Only the gentle sound of the river, moving steadily on its way, remains, a constant presence that speaks to the passing of time. The village, with its simple homes and humble gardens, is at peace. There is no hurry here, no rush to achieve or to move faster, for in this place, time moves at its own pace, unhurried and untroubled by the demands of the outside world. The quiet passage of the river mirrors the quiet passage of the days, each one flowing into the next, each one bringing with it its own small joys and quiet challenges. And yet, as the hours pass and the night deepens, there is a sense that the village has always been, and will always be, a place where life moves slowly and steadily, where each day is lived with care, and where the rhythm of the earth guides those who call it home. Even as the world beyond this village changes, as seasons come and go, and as time moves forward, this small corner of the earth remains untouched, a place where the past, present, and future are woven together in a tapestry of quiet moments, each one as precious as the last. The river's flow is a reminder that time moves ever forward, but it does so with grace, with patience, and with a quiet understanding that all things will come in their own time. For now, the village rests, cradled in the arms of the river, and all is well. The silence of the night deepens, and the stars above continue their silent watch, offering their light to those below, guiding them gently through the darkness. The land, the river, and the sky all work in harmony, creating a peaceful symphony that lulls the village into a restful sleep. The night, though deep and quiet, is full of life, full of the unspoken understanding that time, in all its quiet power, continues its endless dance, sweeping all things forward as it has done for generations. And so, the village remains, a testament to the passage of time and to the quiet, steady rhythm of the earth, ever present and ever constant, flowing gently onward. As the seasons begin to shift, a subtle change comes over the village by the river. The winds, which once carried the soft warmth of summer, now bring a chill that hints at the approach of autumn. The once lush greenery along the riverbanks starts to change, with leaves turning shades of gold and amber, their brilliant colors a reflection of the transition that is unfolding before the village's eyes. The air, once thick with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, now carries the earthy aroma of the forest, preparing for the colder months ahead. The village, however, moves with the rhythm of the river, a constant, ever-changing force that has witnessed countless seasons come and go. The elders, who have seen the transformation of the land many times, observe the subtle changes with quiet reflection. For them, this change is neither surprising nor alarming. It is simply the cycle of life that continues, as it always has. Yet for the younger generations, who have known nothing but the peace and tranquility of the present, the changes feel new, even if they are not. They notice the way the wind has changed direction, how the days are growing shorter, and how the warmth of the sun is now tempered by a coolness that cannot be ignored. The children, though still filled with the energy of youth, feel the pull of the coming shift, and even their laughter, once unrestrained, takes on a quieter tone as they play near the river. The world around them seems to be holding its breath, preparing for what is to come. The river, ever steady and unchanging, continues its journey, but now it carries with it more than just the debris of the forest. It now carries the first signs of the changing season. Twigs, leaves, and branches float gently downstream, reminders of the quiet transformation that is taking place. The village, nestled quietly on the banks of the river, becomes a microcosm of the natural world, where every change, every shift is felt deeply, even if it is not always seen. The people of the village go about their tasks with a renewed sense of awareness, feeling the subtle changes in the air, and the land, the harvest, begins to shift, with the first fruits of autumn being gathered, their flavors richer and heartier than those of the summer months. The gardens that once bloomed with vibrant flowers are now filled with vegetables and fruits that are harvested to provide for the long winter ahead. The women gather in the late afternoons to prepare the preserves and jams that will sustain the village through the colder months, their hands steady and practiced as they work together, sharing stories of seasons past. The men, too, prepare for the changing season, tending to the livestock and ensuring that the tools for the harvest are in good working order. The river, with its steady flow, continues to serve as a reminder that time marches on, regardless of the changes that may occur on the land. The village, though small, is resilient, built on a foundation of understanding and respect for the natural world that sustains it. It is a place where each person plays a role in the balance of the world, where each life is interconnected with the land, the river, and the changing seasons. As the days grow shorter and the nights longer, the village begins to slow down, its pace easing into the quiet rhythm of the coming winter. The nights are now filled with the warmth of fires burning brightly in the hearths, casting flickering shadows on the walls of the cottages, where families gather together, sharing stories, meals, and laughter. The river, though quiet and still, continues to reflect the changing world, its surface now shimmering with the light of the moon, which rises higher in the sky each evening. The stars, once a distant backdrop to the river's steady course, now seem to shine brighter, their light reflecting on the water's surface as though the world itself is taking a moment to pause, to reflect, and to prepare for what is to come. The quiet echoes of change are felt everywhere, from the trees shedding their leaves to the village, preparing for the cold months ahead. Yet even in the face of this change, the village remains rooted in its traditions, its rhythms, and its deep connection to the land and the river that sustains it. The seasons may change, the winds may shift, and the world may grow colder, but in this place, there is a comfort in the knowledge that the river will continue to flow, steady and true, carrying with it the stories of the past and the promises of the future. The people of the village, though aware of the changes that surround them, find solace in the consistency of the river's flow, in the quiet embrace of nature's rhythms, and in the knowledge that, no matter what the future holds, they will face it together as they always have. The changing of the seasons, though a reminder of the passage of time, also brings with it a sense of renewal, of the earth preparing itself for the rest that will come in the winter months. It is a time for reflection, for gathering strength, and for appreciating the quiet beauty of the world as it transitions into something new. As the days grow shorter and the nights longer, the village prepares to embrace the quiet stillness. That comes with the winter months. The river, ever constant, will continue its journey, but for now, it too pauses to reflect, to carry with it the changes of the season, and to offer a sense of peace to the people of the village who have learned to live in harmony with its flow. The quiet village by the river continues its tranquil existence, its daily rhythms untouched by the fast-moving world outside. As the sun rises each morning, the golden light spills across the landscape, touching the earth gently, as if the land itself is waking from a long slumber. The river, ever constant, continues to flow slowly, its surface reflecting the clear blue sky above, with the occasional ripple caused by the soft breeze that stirs the leaves of the trees along its banks. Life in the village moves with a peaceful slowness, each day blending into the next in an unhurried rhythm. The elders, having seen countless seasons change, sit on the porches of their cottages, watching the world unfold with quiet wisdom in their eyes. The children, unaware of the passage of time, play in the fields and along the riverbanks, their laughter light and carefree, carried away by the wind. They chase one another through the tall grasses, their small feet kicking up dust as they race towards the water's edge, where the cool, clear river laps gently at the shore. The sounds of their laughter mingle with the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves, creating a peaceful symphony that echoes through the village. The air is still, as if the earth is holding its breath, waiting for something to change, for something to break the silence that envelops the land. Even the river seems to slow, as if it too is anticipating the change that looms on the horizon. The village, for all its simplicity, feels like a world unto itself, untouched by the chaos of the outside world, where time passes more quickly and the noise of progress drowns out the quiet whispers of nature. Yet, beneath the surface of this peaceful existence, there is an undercurrent of unease. The villagers feel it, though they cannot name it. It is a subtle tension that lingers in the air, a sense that something is about to shift, something that will disrupt the calm they have come to cherish. The once warm winds now carry a chill, and the sky, which had been clear and blue, now seems to darken at the edges, as if the weather itself is mirroring the mood of the land. The river, usually so steady and predictable, has begun to rise, its waters creeping higher with each passing day. The villagers notice the change, though it is still subtle, still manageable. They are used to the ebb and flow of the river, accustomed to the seasonal rise and fall. But this time, it feels different. The water has a weight to it, as though it carries with it more than just the usual debris of fallen leaves and twigs. The fishermen talk of the currents growing stronger, of the fish becoming more restless, as if they too sense the coming change. The women who gather by the river to collect herbs for their daily meals speak in hushed tones of strange weather, patterns of storms that have been brewing in the distant mountains. The men, who have worked the land for years, feel the soil becoming more difficult to till, as though it is resisting their efforts, holding on to the warmth of the summer longer than it should. The children, who sense the unease of their elders, have begun to play less near the water, their eyes drawn to the darkening sky above, as though they too understand that the peaceful days they have known are coming to an end. Yet despite the tension that hangs in the air, life continues in the village, its daily routines largely unchanged. The fires continue to burn in the hearths, the bread continues to bake in the ovens, and the cows continue to graze in the fields. The river, despite its rising waters and growing currents, continues to flow, slow and steady, just as it always has. But beneath this outward calm, there is a growing awareness that the storm is coming. The villagers begin to prepare, not knowing exactly what to expect, but understanding that the peace they have known for so long may soon be disrupted. They gather supplies, stockpile food, and ensure their homes are secure, just in case. The fishermen repaired their boats, checking the nets and oars, readying themselves for whatever the river may bring. The women begin to weave blankets and make clothing, preparing for the cold that is surely coming. The children, sensing the change, help where they can, their small hands eager to contribute to the preparations. And all the while, the river flows on, its waters rising ever so slightly, as if it too is preparing for the storm that looms just beyond the horizon. As the days pass, the tension in the air grows, and the once comforting rhythms of daily life begin to feel more like a lull before the inevitable. The sun, which once bathed the village in warm golden light, now seems more distant, its rays weaker and less certain. The winds, which had once carried the scent of blooming flowers and fresh earth, now carry with them the faint smell of rain, of something more powerful and dangerous. The villagers, though they continue their work, are no longer as carefree as they once were. They look to the sky more often, watching for signs of the storm that is surely coming. And yet, despite the growing uncertainty, there is a sense of quiet determination among them. They have lived through storms before, both literal and metaphorical, and they know that, no matter what comes, they will face it together as a community, bound by the land, the river, and their shared history. The storm, though inevitable, is not something to fear, but something to prepare for. As the river continues its steady rise, and the clouds gather on the horizon, the village braces itself for the change that is coming. It is not yet clear what form that change will take, but it is coming, and the villagers know that, in the end, they will weather it together, just as they always have. As the days draw on and the sky continues to darken, the village begins to feel the weight of the impending storm. The air grows thicker with each passing hour, charged with a strange energy that seems to hum through the land. The river, once calm and unhurried, now moves with an unsettling force, its waters swirling with a restlessness that mirrors the growing unease among the villagers. The once gentle current has become a swift and unpredictable flow, as if the river itself is preparing for something unknown. The fishermen, who had once spent their days casting nets with practiced ease, now find themselves struggling against the changing tides, their boats creaking with the strain of the swelling waters. The women, who had once gathered herbs along the riverbanks, now stay further away from the water's edge, their eyes scanning the horizon for signs of the storm. Even the children, who had once played carelessly near the river, now linger closer. To their homes, their innocent games replaced by nervous glances towards the sky. The village, once peaceful and serene, now feels heavy, as if it too is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable to arrive. In the evenings, as the sun sets, behind the mountains, the villagers gather in the town square, their faces drawn with worry and anticipation. The elders, who have lived through countless seasons, speak in hushed tones of the storms they've weathered in the past, but there is a sense of uncertainty in their voices. This storm feels different, they say. There is a foreboding in the air, a tension that none of them can explain. As the sky darkens further, the winds pick up, rustling the trees that line the village's outskirts, causing the leaves to flutter like nervous whispers. The scent of rain hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil and the faint tang of metal. The once warm breeze now carries a chill, causing the villagers to wrap themselves in thicker cloaks and shawls as they huddle together for warmth. The once comforting sounds of the river, the birds, and the wind now seem ominous, each noise amplified by the stillness that has settled over the land. The village, so accustomed to the gentle rhythm of daily life, now finds itself gripped by an unsettling silence. It is as if the world has paused, holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. In the distance, the dark clouds begin to gather, swirling together like a great, unstoppable force. The villagers, who had once been confident in the slow, steady passage of time, now feel as though time itself has quickened, as if the storm is pushing them towards an uncertain future. The once soft earth beneath their feet now feels harder, more unyielding, as if the land itself is bracing for the coming tempest. As the first distant rumbles of thunder roll across the sky, the villagers are reminded of the power of nature, of the forces that are beyond their control. The river, which has always been a constant in their lives, is no longer a trusted companion, but a wild, unpredictable force that has the potential to sweep them away. The storm is no longer a distant threat, something to be feared, but still far away. It is drawing closer, and the villagers know that they must be prepared, even if they do not know what form the storm will take. The men work quickly to reinforce their homes, securing windows and doors, while the women gather what they can, ensuring that food and firewood are stocked in case the storm lasts longer than expected. The children, though frightened, help where they can, their small hands moving quickly as they follow the example of their elders. The air grows heavier with each passing minute, the pressure building as if the storm itself is waiting for the right moment to release its fury. The villagers have always known the river, its rhythms, its floods, its gentle ebbs, and its violent swells. But this time, the river is different. The water is rising faster than usual, the current stronger, as though it has a mind of its own. It is as if the storm is not only coming from the sky, but also rising from the earth itself, threatening to swallow the village whole. The once gentle river is now a rushing torrent, and the villagers know that they must act quickly if they are to survive the coming deluge. The clouds overhead darken, their heavy weight pressing down on the land, and the first raindrops begin to fall, soft at first, then quickly turning into a downpour. The sound of the rain hitting the earth is deafening, drowning out all other noises. The river, once so peaceful and reassuring, is now a force of nature that cannot be controlled, a reminder of the power that the land and sky hold over the lives of the villagers. As the storm intensifies, the villagers huddle together in their homes, praying for the safety of their families and their homes. The winds howl through the trees, bending them almost to the breaking point, while the rain falls in sheets, soaking the earth and turning the village streets into rivers of mud. The river, once a companion to the village, now threatens to consume everything in its path, its waters rising higher and higher with each passing minute. The storm, though terrifying, is not the end. It is a beginning, a reminder of the forces that shape the land and the lives of those who live upon it. The villagers, though fearful, face the storm with determination, knowing that they must weather it together. As the winds howl and the river rises, they will hold fast to the bonds that tie them together, knowing that no matter what the storm brings, they will endure. The river, for all its power and fury, will eventually subside, and the village will rebuild. The storm, though fierce, will pass, and the sun will shine once again on the quiet village by the river. The storm, though fierce and unrelenting, eventually subsides, leaving the village bathed in a haunting stillness. The river, once an untamable force, begins to recede, its swelling waters slowly retreating from the streets and fields, leaving behind a landscape transformed. The ground, once firm and solid, is now soft and treacherous, marked with the scars of the flood's wrath. The once clear waters are murky with debris, the remnants of broken branches, torn roofs, and shattered lives. The sky, now a dull gray, holds a heavy, oppressive silence, as if the very air itself is holding its breath. The village, which had so recently been full of life, is now eerily quiet, the usual sounds of bustling activity replaced by the distant calls of birds and the occasional rustle of leaves. The villagers, though exhausted and soaked to the bone, slowly emerge from their homes, their eyes scanning the damage that surrounds them. The sight is overwhelming. A village that was once whole is now scattered, its buildings broken, and its fields flooded. The river has claimed what it can, leaving behind only the remnants of what was once a thriving community. Yet despite the devastation, there is a sense of determination in the air. The villagers, though weary and frightened, know that they must rebuild, and they begin to gather together, their movements slow but purposeful. The elders, who have seen countless storms before, speak in hushed tones, offering words of comfort and wisdom to the younger generation. There is no panic, no sense of helplessness, only a quiet resolve to face what lies ahead. As the villagers begin to clear the debris and salvage what they can, they are joined by a strange sense of unity. In the face of destruction, they come together, their differences forgotten in the shared struggle to survive. The men, women, and children work side by side, their hands moving with purpose, their hearts bound by a common goal. The air is thick, with the scent of wet earth and the smoky remnants of the fires that had burned through the storm. The once green fields, now brown and sodden, begin to emerge from the floodwaters as the villagers attempt to repair the damage to their crops. The storm, though devastating, has not broken their spirit. It has only strengthened their resolve. The men who had once spent their days fishing on the river now find themselves repairing boats and reinforcing the dam that had given way to the floodwaters. The women, who had once gathered herbs and flowers by the river, now help tend to the wounded, their hands moving with tender care as they dress wounds and offer comfort. The children, though frightened by the storm's fury, are now returning to their games, their laughter slowly filling the air once again. The village, though scarred, is not defeated. As the villagers work, the sun begins to push through the clouds, casting a pale light over the scene. It is not the blazing sun of a summer day, but rather a soft, diffused light that seems to offer a promise of renewal. The floodwaters, though still present in the streets and fields, no longer hold the same terror they once did. The river, though swollen and unpredictable, is now something that must be respected rather than feared. As the villagers continue their work, the sound of hammers and saws fills the air, the village slowly coming back to life. Though the damage is extensive, there is a sense of hope that begins to take root. The villagers know that it will take time to rebuild, but they are no strangers to hardship. They have weathered storms before, both literal and figurative, and they know that they will rise from the ashes once again. The village, though changed, is still their home, and it will remain so as long as they have the strength to rebuild it. The storm may have taken much from them, but it has also given them something precious, an unwavering sense of unity and resilience. As the last of the floodwaters recede and the village begins to dry out, the villagers look to the future with a sense of cautious optimism. They know that the road ahead will be difficult, that the scars of the storm will linger for some time, but they also know that they are not alone. They have each other, and together they will rebuild. The river, once a force of destruction, will once again become a symbol of life, providing the village with sustenance and beauty as it always has. The storm has passed, but its lessons will stay with the villagers forever. They have learned that nature, though beautiful and vital, is also unpredictable and capable of great fury. But they have also learned that they are stronger than they think, capable of facing whatever comes their way with determination and grace. As the last of the debris is cleared and the village slowly returns to its rhythm, the villagers stand together, looking out over the river that has both taken and given so much. There is no longer fear in their hearts, only a quiet pride in what they have endured and a steadfast belief that they will rebuild, no matter what challenges lie ahead. The storm may have changed the village, but it has also united it, strengthening the bonds between its people and reminding them of the importance of community, resilience, and the quiet power of hope. As the days pass, the village begins to breathe once again, slowly shaking off the weight of the storm that had ravaged it. The landscape, still scarred by the floodwaters, begins to show signs of life. The once drowned fields, now drained and damp, are beginning to sprout new shoots of green, pushing through the earth as though defying the destruction that had claimed them. The river, though more unpredictable than before, flows with a steady, renewed rhythm, no longer the dangerous force it had been during the flood, but still strong, its waters clear once again. The villagers, despite the toll the storm had taken on them, find themselves at a crossroads between the past and the future, between the trauma of what they had lost and the hope of what they could rebuild. The elder women of the village, who had once gathered herbs along the riverbank, are now seen walking together through the now quiet woods, their hands resting on the walking sticks, eyes scanning the woods for the familiar signs of medicinal plants and flowers. Though the flood had swept away many of their familiar places, they still find solace in the land that had always sustained them. The men, too, are hard at work rebuilding the boats and repairing the damaged houses. The rhythmic sound of hammers fills the air, and the steady motion of their work seems to steady the hearts of the villagers as they slowly reclaim their lives. There is a calm determination in the air, an understanding that the damage is not just physical, but emotional as well. They must rebuild not just their homes, but their spirits, and to do so, they know they must lean on each other even more than before. As the days grow warmer, the children, who had once been terrified of the storm's fury, now play once again in the fields, their laughter light and carefree, a reminder of the resilience that lies at the heart of the village. The sounds of their games fill the air as they chase each other through the newly grown grasses, their footsteps leaving small imprints in the damp earth. They are reminded, as the world around them slowly returns to life, that the storm is now part of the past, something they can now carry with them as a reminder of their strength. The women of the village, who had spent the days after the storm comforting their families and caring for the wounded, now turn their focus to rebuilding the village's heart. The communal kitchen, which had been damaged during the flood, is being reconstructed, the stone hearths rebuilt and the large pots repaired. Together, they work to bring warmth and sustenance to the village once again, their laughter and chatter filling the air as they prepare the first communal meal since the storm. The men, who had been working on the fields, now gather around the riverbank, rebuilding the dam that had broken and allowed the floodwaters to rise. The work is hard, but they move with a sense of purpose, knowing that if they can restore the balance of the river, they will restore the balance of their lives. With each stone they place, each beam they set, they feel the weight of the past slowly lifting from their shoulders. The village, though scarred, is being rebuilt from the ground, a testament to the strength and unity of the people who call it home. Though there is no denying the damage, there is also an undeniable sense of pride in the way the villagers have come together to reclaim what was lost. They understand now, perhaps more than ever, the importance of their bond. As the days stretch into weeks, the river's water gradually calms, and the villagers begin to feel a sense of closure. The flood's damage is becoming more manageable, and the village, once again, starts to feel like a home. Though there is still much work to be done, there is a renewed sense of purpose in the village. People are beginning to return to their old routines, tending to their gardens and livestock, making repairs, and rebuilding what was broken. The work is slow but steady, and with each passing day, the village begins to feel like itself again. There is a new energy in the air, a sense of healing. The villagers have learned something about themselves through the storm, about their resilience and the importance of community. As they move forward, they carry that lesson with them. They know now that no matter what the future holds, they will always have each other to lean on, and they will always find a way to rebuild, to carry on. The flood, though a painful chapter in the village's story, will ultimately be remembered not just for the destruction it caused, but for the way it brought the people closer together, strengthened their bonds, and taught them to cherish the land they call home. The village, once torn apart by nature's fury, is now being restored by the hands of those who refuse to be defeated. With each stone, each brick, and each breath of fresh air, the villagers rebuild, not just their homes, but their hearts. They know that they are stronger than the storm, stronger than the floodwaters that had once threatened to drown them. And with that knowledge, they move forward. The sun shines brighter now, the world around them more vibrant than ever before. And the village, though forever changed, is on the path to healing, a place of hope, resilience, and new beginnings. The morning air feels different now. It carries a sense of change that was once absent, a breath of renewal that whispers through the trees and rustles the grass. As the sun rises over the horizon, its golden rays spread across the village like a blanket of warmth, caressing the faces of the villagers as they continue their work. There is a peace that has settled into the landscape, a deep and quiet knowing that the hardest days have passed, and now it is time to rebuild, to start anew. The fields, once scarred by floodwaters, are now filled with the promise of new crops, each green sprout reaching toward the sun with determination. The earth, which had once been suffocated by the heavy rain, is now open again, alive with the sounds of labor and the touch of human hands. The soil is rich and fertile, ready to give its gifts once more. The river, too, has returned to its natural rhythm, though its waters are still somewhat higher than before, a reminder of the strength of the storm that had come and gone. The village, in all its simplicity, stands proud in the face of this quiet transformation. The buildings, though still bearing the scars of the flood, are being restored with care and purpose. The roofs, repaired with new thatch, stand firm against the sky, and the walls, once weak and cracked, are now solid again, patched and reinforced. Every structure, every stone, every wooden beam holds the collective effort of the villagers, a testament to their resilience. The elders, who had once seen the village in its prime, now watch with satisfaction as the younger generation takes charge, working hand in hand with them. They share stories of past floods, of hardships and triumphs, each tale a thread in the fabric of the village's history. These stories are not just memories. They are lessons, reminders of how far the community has come and the strength it has gained over the years. As the day unfolds, the children return to their familiar games, their laughter ringing out across the fields. The worries of the past seem distant now, fading with each passing day. Their joy is contagious, and it fills the air with a lightness that hadn't been felt in weeks. The men of the village, who had been rebuilding the dam along the river, now focus their efforts on restoring the fishing boats that had been washed away. The boats are once again placed gently in the water, their sturdy hulls sliding back into the river with a soft splash, ready for the next journey. The women, who had spent days tending to their homes and families, now gather once again to weave the baskets and linens that will sustain the village. Their hands move deftly, as if they have never stopped, their work a rhythmic dance that flows in time with the heartbeat of the village. The air is filled with the scent of fresh bread, warm and inviting, as the baker's oven crackles with heat. The smell is so familiar, so comforting, and it brings a sense of normalcy to the village that had once been clouded by uncertainty. As the day stretches on, the village continues its quiet resurgence. The tasks are simple, yet each one is a step toward healing. There is no rush, there is no need for haste. The villagers work together in a harmonious rhythm, each person playing their part, each action a reminder of the strength of the community. The land, which had been battered by the storm, is now in the process of being healed, much like the hearts of those who live here. The days are long, but the work is steady, and with each passing moment, the village inches closer to the life it once had. It is not the same, but it is growing, becoming something new. The river, which had once threatened to swallow everything, now seems to offer a sense of peace. Its waters, although higher than usual, are clear and calm, flowing gently around the village as if offering its own blessing. The elders say the river has always been a part of their lives, and they speak of it as an old friend, one that has both given life and taken it away. Now, they watch it with a new sense of respect, grateful for its return to normalcy. The sky, too, seems different, no longer heavy with dark clouds, but instead stretching wide and blue, filled with the lightness of spring. The birds that once flew in flocks, seeking shelter from the storm, now return to their nests, chirping happily in the trees. The animals, too, return to the village, grazing peacefully in the fields, as if sensing the calm that has settled over the land. The village, once silent in its sorrow, is now filled with life again. The work continues, but the air is no longer heavy with the weight of the past. Instead, it is filled with the promise of what is to come, the promise of new beginnings. The villagers have learned much from the storm, but what stands out the most is their ability to endure. They have weathered the hardest of times, and now, as they stand on the threshold of a new season, they look forward to the future with hope and gratitude. The sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the land, and as the villagers gather together in the square for the evening meal, they take a moment to reflect on how far they have come. The warmth of the fire that crackles in the hearth reflects in their faces, and in that light, they see not just the scars of the past, but the strength they have gained. They have emerged from the storm not broken, but whole. The village, like the river, flows steadily toward the future, and with each passing day, it becomes a little stronger, a little more vibrant, a little more alive. The village, now settled in a rhythm of restoration, begins to hum with life again, though there is a quiet sense of reflection in the air, as though the events of the past still linger in the memories of its people. The river, which had once been a source of both sustenance and fear, now flows with a gentle grace, its waters reflecting the serene skies above as the villagers go about their daily tasks. Yet beneath the calm, there is an undercurrent of change, subtle but undeniable. The land, still scarred by the storm's fury, is healing, and with it, the hearts of those who call this place home. The children, once frightened by the rising waters, now play along the riverbanks, their laughter ringing out like music in the air, a sound that is both a reminder of the resilience of youth and a symbol of the village's renewal. The men, their hands weathered from years of toil, work together to rebuild the fences and the walls that had been torn down by the flood, their movements synchronized as if they are part of a greater purpose. Their eyes, however, are not just focused on the task at hand. They are constantly aware of the land around them, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath their feet, as if they are listening for the subtle signs of the land's recovery. The women, who had borne the brunt of the emotional toll during the storm, now lead with quiet strength. They prepare meals for the community, tending to the hearths with care, their hands moving deftly as they shape the dough and stir the pots. The scent of freshly baked bread fills the air, a comfort that wraps around the village like a warm embrace. As the sun dips lower in the sky, the golden light spills across the land, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across the fields. The village square, once a place of sorrow, now brims with life. The elders sit beneath the ancient tree at the center of the square, their voices a soothing hum as they recount the stories of the past. These are the stories of their ancestors, tales passed down through generations, each one a thread in the tapestry of the village's history. The elders speak of hardships endured, of seasons of plenty and seasons of drought, and of the times when the river was both a friend and a foe. The younger generation listens intently, their eyes wide with wonder and respect for the wisdom that comes with age. They know that they are part of something much larger than themselves, a lineage that stretches back in time, woven together by the threads of memory. The air, now cooler as evening falls, carries the scent of the earth, rich and damp from the ash. Rains, the stars begin to twinkle overhead, and the village falls into a hush as the night begins its slow descent. The only sounds are the crackling of the fire and the gentle rustling of the leaves in the trees. The firelight flickers, casting dancing shadows on the faces of those gathered, their expressions soft as they reflect on the day's work. There is a peace in the air now, a peace that comes from the understanding that while the storm may have taken much, it has also left something invaluable behind, a deep sense of connection. The land, though still bearing the marks of its trials, has begun to flourish once again. The crops, once buried beneath the floodwaters, now rise from the soil, green and vibrant. The harvest is still a few months away, but there is hope in every sprout, a promise of abundance to come. The river, once so unpredictable, now flows with a steady grace, its waters clear and bright, reflecting the stars above as it winds its way through the village. The villagers, too, have changed. They are no longer the same people they were before the storm. Their strength has been tested, and they have emerged from the ordeal with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. The bonds between them have deepened, and there is an understanding now that no challenge is insurmountable when faced together. As night falls, the village becomes a quiet place, its streets lit only by the soft glow of lanterns hanging from doorways. The people, tired from the day's labor, retire to their homes, each one wrapped in the comfort of their family's warmth. The village sleeps, but it sleeps with a sense of peace, knowing that the storm is behind them and the future is filled with possibilities. The moon, high in the sky, casts a silver light over the land, illuminating the faces of those who have come to embody the spirit of resilience. Their hearts are full of hope, their spirits unbroken. The storm may have come and gone, but its lessons remain, woven into the fabric of the village's history, and the threads of memory that bind them together are stronger than ever before. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting a soft, ethereal glow over the village. The river, once a force of unpredictable nature, now lay still, its surface like polished glass, reflecting the light of countless stars. The village, nestled quietly by its banks, seemed to breathe in harmony with the earth beneath it. The steady hum of daily life had returned, but there was a certain quietness that lingered, a deep sense of understanding that had settled in the hearts of the villagers. They had weathered the storm, both the literal one that had nearly torn them apart and the metaphorical one that had shaken the very foundation of their community. Yet, through it all, they had endured. There was no rush to rebuild. It was a slow process, one that took its time, for the village knew that true restoration came not just through physical labor, but through the healing of hearts. The children, their faces now bright with laughter, played along the riverbanks. They had grown up quickly in the wake of the disaster, their innocence tempered by the lessons of loss and recovery. Yet in their joy, there was an unwavering belief that they could carry their village into a future of promise and abundance. The sound of their laughter carried through the air, mingling with the gentle rustle of the leaves in the trees and the soft murmur of the river. There was no fear now, only hope. The men, who had once feared the river's wrath, now worked with it, their hands guiding the flow of the waters as they built new embankments, reinforcing the fragile boundaries between land and stream. Their work was not just practical. It was an act of reverence, a quiet acknowledgement that the river was both a giver and a taker, a force of nature that could not be controlled but only understood and respected. As they worked side by side, there was a bond among them, a shared understanding that no individual effort was greater than the collective strength of the community. They had learned this the hard way, through the trials of the storm, but now it was an unspoken truth they carried in their hearts. The women, whose hands had once been busy with the chores of daily life, now found themselves filling new roles. They had become the emotional heart of the village, nurturing the spirits of their families, guiding them through the difficult process of healing. They tended to the gardens with care, their hands coaxing life from the soil, planting the seeds of a new future. The fragrance of fresh herbs and blooming flowers filled the air, their delicate beauty a reminder that even in the face of hardship, life could bloom once more. The village square, once a place of sorrow, had now become a gathering place for reflection and renewal. Beneath the great oak tree that had stood for centuries, the elders sat, their faces weathered with time, but their eyes sharp with wisdom. They spoke of the past, not with bitterness, but with a quiet gratitude for the lessons it had taught them. The younger generation listened intently, their minds open, their hearts full of reverence for the traditions that had been passed down through the ages. It was here, beneath the oak tree, that the circle of life had always begun and ended. It was here that the villagers had gathered to share their stories, to pass down their knowledge, and to find strength in one another. Now, as they gathered once again, there was a sense of unity, a shared understanding that the village was not just a collection of buildings and people, but a living, breathing entity, bound together by history, by the river, and by the land. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke as evening fell, the sky turning a deep shade of purple, and the first stars began to twinkle in the heavens above. The work of the day was done, but there was no rush to retreat to the safety of their homes. Instead, the villagers lingered in the square, exchanging stories and laughter, basking in the glow of their shared humanity. There was a sense of contentment, a quiet peace that settled over the village like a soft blanket. They had faced adversity, yes, but they had also emerged from it stronger, more united than ever before. And as the night stretched on, there was a deep knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The circle of life, like the river itself, would continue to flow unbroken forever onward. In the quiet of the evening, as the stars twinkled above and the river whispered its eternal song, the village settled into a peaceful slumber, its people held in the embrace of the land, the river, and the unbroken circle of life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, but for now, the village was at peace, and that was enough. The storm had passed, the river had returned to its steady course, and the villagers, though scarred, had learned to live with the ebb and flow of life. They were no longer afraid. They had found their strength in one another, and in that, they had found their way forward. Tomorrow was another day, another step in the journey, and with it came the promise of hope, renewal, and the unbroken circle that would carry them through the seasons to come. The village had long since settled into a peaceful rhythm, its inhabitants fully immersed in the cycles of nature that governed their daily lives. Yet, despite the tranquility that had enveloped the community, there were subtle signs that change was beginning to stir on the horizon. The winds that swept down from the distant mountains carried with them whispers of something new, something unknown. The air, once filled with the comforting scent of the river and the earthy fragrance of the forest, now carried a slight tinge of salt, a reminder that the world beyond the village was shifting in ways that none of them could yet understand. The children, ever curious, had noticed the changes first. They ran through the village with their wide eyes, pointing out the strange birds that had begun to appear in the sky, their wings beating against the wind in patterns that spoke of distant lands. The elders, whose faces had long been etched by time and the land, had begun to exchange knowing glances, their minds turning inward as they pondered the significance of these changes. The village was not isolated, not as it had once been. The river, which had once been the lifeblood of the settlement, had begun to show signs of shifting, its currents no longer as predictable as they had once been. The water, once a clear and constant companion, now carried with it a murky hue, as though something was stirring deep within its depths. The fisherman had noticed this first, his nets catching not just fish, but an assortment of debris and strange remnants that could not be explained. He spoke of it to the village leaders, but his words were met with caution. There was an uneasy sense that the river was no longer the gentle force they had always known, but rather a sign of the forces beyond their control. The wind, too, had changed. It no longer brought the sweet scent of wildflowers and fresh rain, but something harsher, something that carried the weight of things to come. It whipped through the trees, bending their branches in ways they had never done before, and the leaves that once danced gracefully in the breeze now seemed to struggle against the gusts, their edges curling and wilting as if under pressure. There was a sense of unease that lingered, like a storm gathering on the horizon. But the villagers, true to their nature, remained steadfast. They had survived storms before, both literal and figurative, and they would survive this one too. Still, there was an undeniable tension in the air, an undercurrent that no one could ignore. The once clear sky had darkened slightly, with clouds gathering on the edges of the village like watchful eyes, waiting for the right moment to release their fury. Even the animals, who had always been a source of comfort and connection to the natural world, seemed restless. The dogs barked in the night, a nervous energy in their movements, while the birds that had once filled the air with their songs now remained silent, as though waiting for something they could not yet see. The villagers began to speak in hushed tones, their conversations turning inward, focusing on what might lie ahead. There was no clear answer, no simple explanation for the changes they were experiencing. But the unease continued to grow, like a storm that had yet to break. The river, which had once been a symbol of life and vitality, now seemed like a reminder of something darker, something more unpredictable. The elders, wise as they were, began to gather in the square, their faces etched with concern. They spoke in low voices, exchanging thoughts and ideas, seeking to make sense of the shifting winds. The younger generation, too, began to notice the change, their once carefree spirits now shadowed by the knowledge that something was different. The village had been at peace for so long that the mere idea of disturbance was enough to send ripples through the community. But they knew, deep down, that peace was not always a constant. Change, in all its forms, was inevitable. And so the village waited. The winds howled through the trees, the river shifted with a new, unsettling current, and the world outside seemed to grow closer. Its presence felt even in the most remote corners of the settlement. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the village settled into an uneasy silence, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. The stars, once bright and comforting in their eternal presence, now seemed distant, their light dimmed by the weight of the world's uncertainties. But even in this silence, there was a sense of resolve. The village, though shaken, would stand firm. They had weathered storms before, and they would weather this one as well. The winds of change were blowing, but the village, rooted in its traditions and its people, would endure. Tomorrow, they would rise again, ready to face whatever came their way. For in the heart of the village, amidst the winds and the shifting river, there was one undeniable truth. The community was unbreakable, bound together by the strength of their unity and their will to survive. No matter what the winds brought, they would stand strong, together. As the village continued to brace itself against the winds of change, an unexpected arrival broke the calm of its once unbroken isolation. The river, which had been the village's lifeblood, now carried something unfamiliar on its surface. A small, weather-worn boat drifting slowly toward the shore, its sail billowing against the wind. The villagers, gathered by the edge of the river, watched with a mixture of curiosity and caution as the boat drew closer, its occupants invisible in the shadows cast by the thickening dusk. The elders, whose eyes had seen much in their time, exchanged wary glances, the weight of their years granting them the ability to recognize the significance of such an arrival. This was no ordinary occurrence. Something was about to change, and the river, which had always been a boundary between their world and the unknown, had now become a conduit for the unexpected. As the boat reached the riverbank, the strange visitors stepped out. They were not like the villagers. Their clothes were different, their mannerisms unfamiliar, and there was a sharpness to their movements that made them seem both foreign and yet undeniably present in the village's life. Their skin was darker than that of the villagers, and their accents, when they spoke, were harsh and foreign to the ears that had only ever known the soft, rolling dialects of the settlement. They were strangers, unmistakably so, and their arrival stirred something deep within the village's collective heart. The villagers remained silent, their breaths held as the strangers approached, seemingly aware of the weight of the moment. For many generations, the village had been untouched by the outside world, sheltered by its remote location and the gentle but unyielding flow of the river. But now, with the arrival of these outsiders, the village's isolation had been broken, and the world beyond the river's edge had come knocking at their door. The elder, who had long served as the village's leader, stepped forward cautiously, his staff tapping against the earth in time with his measured steps. His face, worn by the years, showed no fear, but rather the practiced calm of someone who had seen change before. He addressed the strangers, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of curiosity. "Who are you?" he asked, the simple question carrying with it the weight of centuries of solitude. The strangers paused for a moment, exchanging looks amongst themselves. Then, one of them, a tall man with eyes that reflected a depth of experience that the elder could not quite place, stepped forward and spoke in a language that was strange yet oddly familiar. He spoke of distant lands, of roads long traveled, and of stories that stretched across the horizon. The village had never heard such words before. His story, though fragmented by the unfamiliarity of his tongue, spoke of struggles, of migrations, of places where the sky was always heavy with the threat of storms, and the earth never knew the tranquility the village held in such abundance. The strangers had been journeying for many moons, their lands ravaged by forces beyond their control. They sought refuge, a place to rest, to rebuild. They had followed the river's course, believing it to be a lifeline, a guide to safety. But now, as they stood in front of the village, they found themselves uncertain of what to expect. The elder, though still wary, recognized the signs of desperation in the stranger's eyes. These were not the conquerors of old, nor the raiders that had once swept through distant lands. No, these were people who had been worn down by time and struggle, who sought only the peace that the village had long taken for granted. The villagers, too, began to stir. They had long lived by a simple creed: protect what you have, keep to your land, and never invite the unknown. Yet, as the evening wore on and the moon began its slow climb into the sky, the villagers found themselves at a crossroads. What should be done? Should they welcome these strangers, unknown and unpredictable, into their fold? Or should they remain steadfast in their isolation, closing the doors to a world that now seemed to demand their attention? The village's response would set the tone for what was to come. The elder, after a long silence, nodded toward the strangers. He motioned for them to follow him, leading them toward the village's heart, where the fire had already been kindled. The villagers, though still uncertain, watched as the strangers were escorted into the warmth of the village's communal space, their wary eyes never straying far from their new guests. There was something about the strangers, something in the way they carried themselves, that made the villagers uneasy. But there was also a glimmer of something else: curiosity, perhaps, or an unspoken recognition that this meeting, this fateful encounter, could not be ignored. As the night unfolded, stories were exchanged, though the language remained a barrier. The stranger's tale was one of survival, of endurance, of journeys that had tested their resolve in ways that the villagers could scarcely imagine. Yet, there was something familiar about their struggles, something that resonated with the villagers' own experiences, the quiet battles fought over the years to protect their way of life. The wind, which had been blowing steadily throughout the evening, now shifted, carrying with it a sense of anticipation. The village, once a place of peace and quiet, had now become a meeting point between two worlds. What would come of this encounter? Would the strangers find the refuge they sought, or would they become yet another force that would disturb the fragile peace that the village had held for so long? As the flames of the fire flickered in the darkness, the villagers could not help but wonder what the future held for them, now that the river had brought the outside world to their doorstep. The stranger's arrival was not the end of the story, but rather the beginning of something far more uncertain, a journey into the unknown that would reshape the village forever. The quiet night air hung heavy with the scent of earth and the distant aroma of the river, which flowed as steadily as time itself. The strangers, now settled into the village, had begun to share more of their story, and the villagers listened, their hearts torn between suspicion and sympathy. They had spent their lives isolated, living according to a rhythm set by the land, and now the arrival of these strangers had disrupted that familiar beat. The elders sat in their usual spots around the fire, exchanging whispers in low voices, their faces drawn with the weight of decision. Their thoughts were as ancient as the river, but now, for the first time in generations, the flow of their world was being disturbed, and they could no longer sit in silence. They had long believed that the river was their protector, that its steady flow separated them from the world beyond. Yet, with the stranger's arrival, that boundary was no more. They could no longer ignore the fact that the outside world was knocking at their door, demanding their attention, and the villagers could no longer keep their walls high, no matter how comforting the isolation had once been. The next day, the villagers gathered in the heart of their settlement. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a warm, golden light over the village, and there was a quiet expectancy in the air. The elders had decided that the time for secrecy and silence had passed. If these strangers were to remain, there would need to be a reckoning, a discussion that would chart the course for the village's future. The village was no longer a place of isolation, and they would have to adapt to the changes that were now inevitable. One by one, the villagers came together, their faces serious but open to conversation. It was a rare event for them to gather in such a large group, but the weight of the situation called for it. No longer could they pretend that nothing had changed. The strangers, too, had gathered, standing at the edge of the circle, their eyes watching the villagers with a sense of cautious hope. The leader of the strangers, the tall man who had first stepped ashore, approached the center of the group. His movements were slow, deliberate, as if he, too, felt the gravity of the moment. His face, though weathered by travel, held an earnestness that resonated with the villagers. He spoke first, his voice carrying a quiet but firm tone. "We did not come here to cause harm," he said, his accent thick but his words clear. "We sought only refuge, a place to rest and recover. Our lands were ravaged, and we have nowhere left to go. We do not ask for much, only shelter, food, and a chance to rebuild." His words hung in the air, and for a moment there was a palpable silence. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. They had long lived by the philosophy of self-sufficiency, never relying on others, and the idea of opening their gates to outsiders. was a difficult one to accept. The elders, the keepers of tradition and wisdom, looked to each other for guidance. This was the turning point, the moment when the village's fate would be decided. They could not ignore the strangers, nor could they blindly welcome them without considering the consequences. Finally, the elder who had led the initial welcome spoke, his voice steady but laced with the weight of his years. "Your words are heard," he said, "but the life we have built here is one of solitude. It has kept us safe and allowed us to thrive in a way that no other village has. To open our gates to you, to share what we have, is not something we do lightly. We must consider what this will mean for all of us." His words were measured, but there was an undeniable tremor of uncertainty in his tone. He had seen the world, beyond the river, and knew the dangers that it carried. The strangers were not the only threat to their peace. Yet he also understood the pull of compassion, the human desire to help those in need. It was a delicate balance, and it would take more than a few words to settle the issue. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the conversation unfolded, each villager adding their voice to the growing debate. Some spoke passionately in favor of welcoming the strangers, seeing it as an opportunity to forge new relationships, to share their resources and knowledge in exchange for the lessons the strangers could offer. Others, though, remained deeply skeptical. They feared what the arrival of these outsiders could bring, the unknown elements that could tip the delicate balance they had maintained for so long. The younger villagers, those who had never known a world outside the river's boundary, were especially eager to embrace the strangers. They had grown up in a village that was quiet and peaceful, but they had also felt a restlessness, a yearning for something more. To them, the strangers represented the possibilities of a wider world, a world beyond the familiar confines of their village. But for the older generations, the elders who had weathered storms and seen the ebb and flow of countless seasons, there was a different perspective. They saw the risks more clearly, the dangers of opening their village to the unknown. The conversation stretched through the day, each side presenting their case, and by evening, the villagers were no closer to a resolution. Tension hung heavy in the air, but it was clear that the village could no longer stand in the same place. Something had to give. As night fell, the villagers returned to their homes, but the discussions did not stop. Quiet conversations continued. In the shadows, in the corners of the houses, as families weighed the implications of their decision. In the end, it was the river, that ancient and constant force, that would determine the village's future. The villagers gathered again the following morning, the air cool and crisp with the early morning dew. The decision had been made. The elders, though cautious, had agreed to extend an offer to the strangers. The village would provide them with food and shelter, but only for a time. The outsiders would need to prove themselves worthy of the village's trust, and the villagers would be watching closely. It was not a full embrace, but it was a beginning, a chance for both sides to find common ground. The strangers there, faces a mixture of relief and gratitude, accepted the offer without hesitation. Their journey had been long, and their need for refuge was great. For now, they would rest, but they would also honor the agreement, aware of the fragile nature of their place within the village. As the days passed, the village began to change. The arrival of the strangers marked the start of something new, something uncertain but necessary. The river, which had long been a barrier between the village and the outside world, had now become a conduit for something greater. Whether it would lead to harmony or discord, no one could say for sure. But the village was no longer the same. The strangers had arrived, and with them, a new chapter had begun. The quietude that had settled over the village since the arrival of the strangers was a fragile peace. And though the villagers had accepted the newcomers into their fold, the atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. The river, once a boundary, now seemed to bind the villagers and the strangers together in a silent, unspoken agreement that neither party fully understood. It had been a week since the villagers had extended their offer of refuge, and while life had resumed its usual rhythm in the village, the air was laden with tension. The villagers watched the strangers with a mixture of caution and curiosity, their every action scrutinized, their words dissected in hushed conversations around the fire. The strangers, too, felt the weight of this gaze, and though they had been welcomed, they were keenly aware that their stay was not unconditional. They knew they had to prove their worth, but they did not yet understand the customs and rhythms that governed the village. The tall man who had first spoken for the strangers, now known to the villagers as Eamon, had made it his mission to blend into the community as best he could. He had spent the past days quietly helping where he could, working alongside the villagers in the fields and at the river's edge, trying to show that he was not a threat, but simply a weary traveler seeking solace. Yet, for all his efforts, he could feel the distance between them, a distance that could not be crossed by actions alone. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, Eamon stood at the edge of the river, watching the water flow steadily by. He had always been a man of action, a leader by nature, but here he found himself at a crossroads. The villagers had offered their help, but he knew they were waiting for something more before they would truly accept him and his people. They needed proof, a reason to believe that their way of life would not be disrupted. Eamon had heard the whispers, the talk of the elders, the murmurs of the young about the dangers of change, of allowing outsiders to alter the delicate balance they had known for so long. He could understand their fear. The world outside the village was a place of chaos, a land ravaged by war and famine. It was a place where trust was a rare commodity, and betrayal often came swiftly. But Eamon had no intention of bringing that chaos here. He simply wanted to survive. As the evening approached, Eamon's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see the elder who had first spoken to him standing a few paces away, his face as stoic as ever, but his eyes softened by the passing of time. The elder was a man of few words, yet Eamon had learned to listen carefully when he spoke. The elder approached, and after a long pause, spoke in his quiet, measured tone. "You wonder how to bridge the gap between us, Eamon," the elder said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "But you cannot rush trust. It must be earned, and it takes time." Eamon nodded, understanding the truth in the elder's words. "I know," he replied softly. "But how can I prove that we are not a threat?" The elder studied him for a long moment, his gaze searching, as though trying to gauge the sincerity in Eamon's heart. Finally, he spoke again. "There is a task that must be done," he said, his voice steady, but carrying a hint of gravity. "It is a task that has been passed down through generations, one that requires both strength and unity." Eamon raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the elder's words. "What task?" The elder gestured toward the river, his eyes reflecting the deep currents of the water. "There is a stretch of land upstream," he explained. "It has long been untouched, but it is now threatened by the rising waters. The banks have begun to erode, and if we do not act soon, the village could be at risk." Eamon's heart quickened at the thought. The task was a challenge, one that would require all of the villagers, old and young alike, to work together. But it was also an opportunity to prove himself, to show that he and his people were not so different from the villagers, that they could work together toward a common goal. He looked at the elder, understanding the unspoken message. "I will help," he said, his voice steady. "We will help." The elder nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Good," he said. "But remember, this is not just about the task. It is about unity. It is about showing that we can come together, despite our differences. The next morning, the villagers gathered at the river's edge, the strangers among them, ready to begin the task that would determine their future in the village. The air was thick with anticipation as Eamon, along with several villagers, began to survey the land upstream. They worked together to identify the areas most vulnerable to erosion, each person contributing their knowledge, their strength, their skill. The villagers were wary, but they followed Eamon's lead, and in the days that followed, something began to shift. Slowly, they began to trust him, to see the sincerity in his efforts. The strangers, too, worked tirelessly, and in the evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sound of laughter and conversation began to fill the air. It was a subtle change, but it was there an unspoken acknowledgement that they were no longer outsiders, no longer strangers, but part of something larger, something more enduring. As the task progressed, Eamon found himself growing closer to the villagers. He saw their strengths and weaknesses, their resilience and their vulnerabilities. They were a people forged by hardship, shaped by the land and the river, but they were also a people who knew the importance of unity. They understood that their survival depended not on isolation, but on collaboration. And so, as the days turned to weeks, Eamon and the villagers worked side by side, learning from each other, growing stronger together. The task was hard, but it was also rewarding. And in the end, when the work was finished and the land had been reinforced against the river's threat, Eamon knew that this was the moment when the true crossing had occurred, not just of paths, but of hearts. The village had accepted him, his people, and the changes they brought. But more importantly, they had found a new strength in unity, one that would carry them into the future, no longer defined by the walls they had built around themselves, but by the bonds they had forged with each other. The village had settled into a quiet rhythm after the tasks of the past few weeks, the new alliances between the villagers and the strangers becoming stronger with each passing day. Eamon, now fully integrated into the village, had grown close. To many of the villagers, their lives intertwined with his own as they worked side by side to ensure the stability of the land and the riverbank. Yet, as peaceful as the days had become, there was an undercurrent of tension that never quite dissipated, an unspoken reminder that their bond, while solid, was still fragile. It was during one of these peaceful evenings, when the firelight flickered gently across the faces of those gathered by the river's edge, that the long shadow of the past finally reached them. The sound of footsteps approaching from the distance, sharp against the stillness of the night, broke the calm. Eamon, seated by the fire, turned his head sharply, sensing the change in the air before he even saw the figure that emerged from the trees. The elder, who had so carefully guided the integration of the strangers into the village, stood in the gathering dusk, his face more solemn than Eamon had ever seen it. There was something in his posture, something in the way his hands trembled ever so slightly that made Eamon's heart tighten with unease. The elder's eyes met his, and in them, Eamon saw a glimmer of something ancient and heavy, something that had been carried for years, perhaps even generations. Without a word, the elder motioned for Eamon to follow, his steps deliberate as he led him away from the fire and into the quiet shadows of the village. The villagers watched, their murmurs fading as the two figures disappeared into the night. They had been a peaceful people, but the elder's expression told Eamon that this peace was not as secure as it seemed. They reached the edge of the forest, where the trees thinned and the open plains stretched out before them, the sky above twinkling with distant stars. The elder stopped, turning to face Eamon with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. "There is something you must know," the elder began, his voice low and steady, but heavy with the weight of years. "The river, which has been both our life and our boundary, has secrets. Secrets that have been buried for far too long. Eamon listened closely, sensing the gravity in the elder's words. Secrets? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The elder nodded, his eyes narrowing as he looked out across the land. Long ago, before the village was founded, the river was a different force. It was wild and untamed, much as the people who lived along its banks. But those who came before us, the ones who settled this land, made a choice that would bind them to the river and to the land forever. The river was not just a lifeline for sustenance, but a guardian of their past, a keeper of memories that have been lost to time, but the balance has shifted. Eamon's brow furrowed as he tried to understand. What do you mean by the balance has shifted? The elder sighed deeply, his face etched with years of sorrow. The river, though a source of life, has always been a reminder of the old ways, of a time when the land was ruled by forces beyond our understanding. Those forces have never truly gone away, and they are awakening. Eamon felt a knot form in his stomach as he processed the elder's words. Are you saying the river ... is dangerous? The elder's gaze darkened, his lips tight with restraint. Not dangerous in the way you think. The river itself is not the threat, but what lies beneath it, what has always been beneath it. The old ones, the ones who once lived here, left something behind. A curse, a pact, or perhaps a warning. I cannot say. But the river has been watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. And now, that moment has come. Eamon stood frozen, the weight of the elder's words sinking in. He had come to the village seeking peace, seeking refuge from a world that had left him broken. But now he realized that the very thing that had given him solace, the river, was part of a larger, far more complex puzzle. What do we do? He asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging in his mind. The elder looked at him, his eyes filled with a mixture of resignation and hope. We do what we have always done. We face it together. But we must be prepared for the truth of the river's past, and for whatever may come with it. As the elder turned and began to walk back toward the village, Eamon stood still, his heart heavy with the knowledge that his journey was far from over. What had begun as a search for peace had now turned into something much darker, something that could change the course of their future. The firelight from the village flickered faintly in the distance, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch across the land, as if reaching for something buried deep within the earth. Eamon knew that the answers he sought were hidden beneath the surface, just as the river's true nature lay beneath its calm waters. But he was no longer the outsider, no longer a stranger to this land. He had a place here, and he would do whatever it took to protect it, no matter what secrets the river held, no matter how deep the shadows stretched. The long shadow of the past had finally found them, and Eamon knew that their journey was just beginning. The morning after the elder's cryptic warning, the village was quieter than usual, a palpable tension hanging in the cool morning air. The events of the night before had unsettled everyone, though no one dared speak of it aloud. The river, once a source of peace and life, now felt more like an ominous presence, its flowing waters masking secrets that had been buried for centuries. Eamon couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something that would reveal the truth of the land and its long-forgotten past. He stood by the riverbank, his gaze fixed on the rippling water, as though hoping the current would reveal the answers he sought. The villagers had gathered in the square, their movements subdued, their usual chatter replaced by quiet whispers. Life in the village was not the same as it had been only days ago, when the sun seemed to shine brighter and the river's song seemed to promise endless peace. But now, every rustle of leaves and every splash of water seemed to carry a deeper meaning, a reminder of the elder's words. The river has always been a keeper of memories, the elder had said. But the balance has shifted. Eamon had no idea what those words meant, but he knew one thing for sure. He could no longer ignore the river, nor the past it guarded. The people who had settled this land had left behind more than just their homes. They had left behind something far more dangerous. As the day stretched on, Eamon found himself returning to the river, his mind heavy with the weight of the elder's revelation. The villagers had gone about their business, though the shadows of doubt seemed to hang over them all. What if the elder was right? What if the river, once a symbol of life, was now a warning? The sound of footsteps approaching behind him broke his reverie. He turned to find Lyra, the young woman who had helped him navigate the early days in the village, standing at the edge of the riverbank. Her face was etched with concern, but her eyes were steady, as if she had already come to terms with something Eamon was only beginning to understand. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" she asked, her voice soft but knowing. "The river?" Eamon nodded, his gaze drifting back to the water. "Yes, it's different now. The way the elder spoke last night, it felt like a warning." Lyra stepped closer, her feet barely disturbing the soft mud beneath her. "It's not just the river," she said quietly. "It's the land itself. The past is not something we can simply forget. It lingers, buried beneath the surface, waiting to resurface when the time is right." Eamon looked at her, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Lyra glanced at the water, her expression thoughtful. The village was built on the ruins of an older settlement, one that was destroyed long ago. The elders know more than they let on, but they keep it hidden, thinking it will protect us. But the river remembers. It always remembers. A chill ran down Eamon's spine as the weight of her words sank in. The river, a force that had been central to their lives, had witnessed everything, every rise, every fall, every secret, and every betrayal. It had seen the birth of civilizations and their eventual demise. And now, as the village thrived in peace, it seemed as though the river was beginning to stir, awakening something that had been dormant for centuries. "What do we do?" Eamon asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Do we prepare for something we don't understand?" Lyra shook her head. "We don't have a choice. The past is coming back, and we will have to face it. The river is calling us to remember, to confront whatever it has been hiding." Her words were both a comfort and a curse, offering no easy answers. Only the heavy knowledge that their lives, so simple and peaceful, were about to be irrevocably changed. Eamon felt the ground shift beneath him, as though the earth itself was shifting with the weight of a long-forgotten truth. What had they stumbled upon? What ancient secret had been buried here, waiting to be uncovered? The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the trees and carrying with it the faint scent of water and earth, both comforting and unsettling. Eamon looked at Lyra, a silent understanding passing between them. They could not ignore the past any longer. They would have to seek out the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it might be. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the village, Eamon felt the pull of the river once more. It called to him, not with the promise of peace, but with the weight of its secrets. And as night began to fall, he knew that the coming days would bring answers, and those answers would change everything. The river's echoes, once a distant murmur, were now growing louder, and the time had come to confront whatever had been left behind. The past, long buried beneath layers of time and memory, was about to resurface, and nothing would ever be the same again. The village had always been a place where the pulse of life and the quiet flow of the river intertwined in a peaceful dance. But that was no longer the case. As Eamon stood at the river's edge, the same river that had once felt like a friend, he realized it now held secrets, dark and ancient, secrets that had begun to stir after centuries of dormancy. The sun had just dipped behind the hills, leaving the village bathed in a soft twilight glow. Yet the shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual, as though the very fabric of time was bending in response to some unspoken force. The evening air carried with it a chill that was unusual for this time of year, a coldness that seeped into Eamon's bones, and as he looked out across the water, he saw the ripples shift in a way that felt wrong. It was not just the changing current or the fading light. It was something deeper, something embedded within the very nature of the land. Eamon knew that the river was no longer a mere stream, but a living, breathing entity that held the memories of everything it had witnessed over the centuries. The rise and fall of civilizations, the joy and sorrow of countless generations, the bloodshed, the love, the pain. It had seen it all. And now, as the village slept, that river was awakening, calling out to those brave enough to listen. Beside him, Lyra stood quietly, her eyes fixed on the water, sensing the same tension in the air. She had known for some time that their lives would never be the same once they had crossed this threshold, once they had dared to inquire about the land's forgotten past. The elders had warned them about this moment, but no one truly understood what it meant. The elders' cryptic warning echoed in his mind. The river has always been a keeper of memories, but the balance has shifted. What did that mean? What had shifted? And more importantly, how would they face whatever was coming? As Eamon pondered these questions, a sound broke the silence, a faint whispering from across the river, carried by the wind. At first, it was barely audible, but then it grew louder, almost like a chant, a rhythm, an ancient incantation that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. He turned to Lyra, his heart pounding in his chest. "Do you hear that?" He whispered. Lyra nodded, her face pale in the dimming light. "It's the river," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's calling us." Eamon felt a shiver run down his spine as the sound grew louder still. And then, suddenly, as if the river itself had exhaled, there was silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but an oppressive one, like the air had been thickened, as though the very atmosphere had taken a deep breath and was holding it in anticipation. He could feel the weight of something heavy in the air, something ancient, something waiting. "We have to go," Eamon said urgently, grabbing Lyra's arm. "Whatever it is, it's not good." But Lyra did not move. Instead, she stood frozen, her gaze still fixed on the river. "No," she whispered, almost as if in a trance. "This is the moment. We can't run from this anymore." Eamon felt his heart race as he followed her gaze. The surface of the river had gone still, unnaturally so, as though the water itself had stopped flowing. The once vibrant ripples were gone, replaced by a glassy calm that seemed almost unnatural in its perfection. The moonlight shone down, illuminating the water in a silver sheen, but it was not the tranquil reflection of the moon that caught his attention. It was the faint outline of something moving beneath the surface, something large, something that had been there for far longer than anyone had ever realized. The whispering sound had returned, growing louder, now more like a song, an eerie, hypnotic melody that seemed to call to them. Eamon's instinct screamed for him to run, to get away from the river, but Lyra did not move. "It's here," she said softly, almost reverently. "It has always been here." The water beneath the surface began to shift, the faint outline growing. Clear, its form distinct, now a massive serpentine shape that slithered slowly beneath the surface. The sight sent a shock of terror through Eamon's chest. He knew in that moment that whatever this was, it had been waiting for something. Waiting for them. Waiting for the truth to be uncovered. The river's secrets were far darker than they could have imagined. And now, those secrets were coming to light. "What is that?" Eamon whispered, his voice trembling with both fear and awe. What is it? Lyra turned to him, her eyes wide, but there was no fear in them, only a deep understanding. It's the river's guardian, she said, the one who watches over all that is hidden. Eamon looked back at the river, his eyes straining to make out more details in the dim light. But the water had become unnaturally still again, and the form was no longer visible. It had vanished as quickly as it had appeared. What does it want? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra's gaze was distant now, as though she were listening to something far beyond Eamon's understanding. It doesn't want anything, she said softly. It is a force of nature, bound to protect the river's secrets. And now that we have discovered the truth, it will not let us walk away from it. The silence that followed felt suffocating, and the river, once a symbol of life and prosperity, now felt like a dark, hidden force. Eamon realized that the river was not merely a body of water, but a sentinel, an ancient protector of truths that had been buried long ago. And as the night stretched on, he knew that they had crossed a line. There would be no turning back from this. The village, the river, and the land, they were all connected by threads far older than anything they had understood. And the time had come to face what had been forgotten. The river had spoken, and it was calling them to uncover the truth. They would have to follow, no matter how dangerous the path. The echoes of the past had awakened, and they would lead them into the depths of the unknown. The time to run was over. The truth was waiting, and the river was no longer just a river. It was a keeper of memories, and those memories were about to be revealed. The morning sun rose slowly over the village, casting a warm golden light across the quiet streets. Yet an air of unease hung heavily over the once peaceful settlement. The events of the night had left their mark, not only on Eamon and Lyra, but on the very land itself. It was as if the earth had absorbed the tension, the awakening of the river's guardian, and now it seemed to pulse with an energy that neither of them could fully comprehend. Eamon, still reeling from the revelation of the night before, found himself walking along the riverbank, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. The water that had once been his refuge now seemed alien, almost hostile, as if it were hiding something within its depths that was beyond mortal understanding. Lyra walked beside him, her presence a calming influence, but even she could not shake the feeling that the land itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. They had come so far, unraveling the mysteries that had been buried for generations. But now that they stood at the precipice of truth, they both wondered what price they would have to pay. The river had been the lifeblood of the village for as long as anyone could remember, but now it felt like a force of nature that was too vast and powerful for them to fully grasp. The whispers from the night had ceased, but the sense of being watched, of being drawn into something much larger than themselves, lingered in the air. "Do you feel it?" Eamon asked, his voice low, as he glanced at Lyra. She nodded, her eyes distant, as though she too was sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "It's like the land has woken up," she said softly. "The river's guardian is not just a protector of secrets. It's a keeper of balance, and that balance has been disturbed." Eamon felt a chill run down his spine at her words. The river had always been a source of life, its waters providing nourishment and sustenance to the village. But now it seemed like a force that could no longer be controlled. As they continued to walk, they noticed that the villagers, once bustling about their daily routines, had become quiet and subdued, their faces etched with worry and fear. It was as though the river's awakening had touched something deep within the hearts of everyone in the village. Even the children, who once played by the water's edge without a care in the world, had stopped watching the river with wide eyes, as if they too knew that something had changed. It was then that Eamon realized that the river's power was not confined to the water alone. The land, the trees, the very air they breathed, All were connected by the ancient forces that the river had protected for so long. And now, as that protection began to unravel, the entire world around them seemed to be shifting, adapting to a new reality that they could not yet understand. The first sign of this shift came when the village elders gathered in the town square, their faces grim and their voices hushed. Eamon and Lyra joined them, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. "We cannot ignore it any longer," Elder Kale said, his voice steady but filled with a sorrow that Eamon had never heard before. "The river is more than just water. It is the lifeblood of this land, and the guardian who watches over it has been disturbed. We have all felt the change." The elders spoke of ancient prophecies, tales of a time when the river's guardian would awaken, when the balance between nature and man would be tested. But the elders had never truly believed that such a time would come. Now, standing before them, was the undeniable proof that the river's power was not a myth. It was real, and it was waking. "We must find the source of the disturbance," Elder Kale continued, his voice heavy with the weight of centuries of knowledge. "Only by understanding what has awakened the guardian can we hope to restore the balance before it is too late." Eamon and Lyra exchanged a look, both understanding the gravity of the situation. The path ahead would not be easy. They would have to journey deeper into the mysteries of the land, confronting forces that had been hidden for centuries. But the village, and perhaps the entire world, depended on them finding answers. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the village was still, as if holding its breath in anticipation. The air was thick with the promise of change, and the whispers of the past seemed to echo in the wind, urging them forward. The river, once a peaceful symbol of life, was now a harbinger of something unknown, something ancient, and something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Eamon could feel the weight of the land beneath his feet, as though the very earth was urging him to step carefully, to tread lightly, for the consequences of their actions would echo through time. Lyra, too, felt the call of the river, the pull, to understand its mysteries, even as she feared what those mysteries might reveal. The world was changing, and they were at the center of it all. As they set off towards the deeper parts of the river, where the land became wild and untamed, Eamon couldn't help but wonder if they were ready for what lay ahead. The shifting sands of time had already begun to move, and there was no turning back. The river's secrets would soon be revealed, and whatever they uncovered would shape the future of the village, the land, and the very forces that governed nature itself. The quest for truth was no longer a choice. It was a necessity. And in the silence of the morning, as they walked toward the unknown, Eamon and Lyra both understood that they had already crossed a line from which there would be no return. The land was no longer the same. As Eamon and Lyra ventured deeper into the heart of the wilderness, they could feel the earth beneath their feet tremble, as if it were alive, responding to the presence of the river's guardian. The air had taken on a strange, almost electric quality, charged with an unseen energy that pulsed through the trees and the very ground they walked upon. Each step forward felt as if they were crossing an invisible threshold into a place that was not meant for mortal eyes. The forest itself seemed to hum with life, as if every leaf, every branch, every whispering wind was a part of something far greater than what they had encountered before. The river, once a tranquil and inviting force, now seemed to be a living, breathing entity, winding its way through the land with purpose and power. Its waters, once clear and calm, now rippled with strange undertones, as if it held ancient secrets beneath its surface. Eamon felt a sense of awe and dread wash over him as the towering trees closed in, their gnarled roots twisting like serpents beneath the ground. He had never imagined the river's heart would be so powerful, so overwhelming in its presence. He glanced at Lyra, her face a mirror of his own mixed emotions. She was no longer the carefree spirit she had been when they first set out on this journey. The river had changed her as much as it had changed him, molding them both into something else, something more. It was as if the very essence of the river was seeping into their bones, transforming them into something beyond what they had been. Before, the guardian of the river, an ancient and mystical being, had been waiting for them. They could feel its eyes upon them, though no creature was visible in the shadows of the forest. There was an aura of timelessness surrounding them, and with each passing moment, the weight of what they had come to do grew heavier. The guardian had sensed their arrival long before they reached the heart of the river. The pull was undeniable, drawing them in like moths to a flame. The river had been waiting for them, and now they were here, standing at the threshold of something ancient and powerful. As they continued deeper into the woods, the path grew narrower, and the trees seemed to close in on them, their branches intertwining like the fingers of giants. Eamon could feel the presence of the river growing stronger with each step, the rushing water now a constant hum in the background. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The forest seemed to hold secrets that it was unwilling to reveal, and the closer they got to the heart of the river, the more the air seemed to shimmer with anticipation. It was then that they saw it. Emerging from the shadows, like a ghost from the mist, was the river's guardian. The creature was unlike anything they had ever seen before, a being of water and earth, its body shifting like liquid stone, with glowing eyes that burned with the intensity of 1,000 stars. It was the river's essence made flesh, its power, and wisdom ancient and beyond comprehension. Eamon and Lyra froze, their hearts pounding in their chests as they faced the guardian. The river had brought them here, and now they were about to face the consequences of their journey. They had come to ask for answers, to seek the river's wisdom, but they had no idea what the cost would be. The guardian spoke, its voice a strange mixture of sound and silence, as if it were both speaking and thinking at the same time. "You have come seeking knowledge," it said, its voice vibrating through the air. "But be warned, for the river gives only what it is willing to share. Knowledge is a gift, but it is not without its price." Eamon and Lyra exchanged a glance, their minds racing with the weight of the words. They had known this journey would not be easy, but they had not anticipated the gravity of what they were about to face. The river had been their guide, but now they stood at the precipice of something far greater than they could have imagined. This journey had never been just about finding answers. It had always been about understanding the choices they would make and the consequences of those choices. The river had shown them the way, but it was up to them to choose their path. The guardian continued, its eyes flickering with ancient knowledge. "The river has seen your past, your present, and your future. It knows the choices you will make and the paths you will take, but it does not guide your fate. You must choose your own way, for the river can only show you the way forward, not the one you must take." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Eamon could feel the weight of them settling into his soul, their implications slowly sinking in. This journey had never been just about finding answers. It had always been about understanding the choices they would make and the consequences of those choices. The river had shown them the way, but now they stood at a crossroads, and the path ahead was unclear. The guardian's gaze softened, as if it understood the burden of their journey. "You have come far, and you have learned much. But remember, knowledge is not the end of the journey. It is only the beginning. The river will always flow, but it will change. You must change with it." Eamon and Lyra nodded, understanding the truth in the guardian's words. They had come seeking answers, but they had found something much greater, an understanding of themselves and the choices that lay ahead. The guardian stepped back, its form dissolving into the mist like the river itself, leaving Eamon and Lyra standing at the heart of the river, the weight of their journey heavy on their shoulders. They had found what they were looking for, but the real journey had only just begun. The river would continue to flow, and they would continue to follow it. But now, they understood the true meaning of the path they had chosen. The journey was not about the answers they sought. It was about the choices they would make along the way, and the wisdom they would gain from the river's guidance. With a final glance at the fading mist, Eamon and Lyra turned away from the heart of the river, ready to face whatever came next. They had come seeking answers, and they had found them. But now, it was time to forge their own path, and trust in the wisdom of the river to guide them forward, wherever that path might lead. Eamon and Lyra had reached a crossroads, but unlike any they had faced before, it was not a physical path, but one carved into the very fabric of their souls. The river, with its endless twists and turns, had always seemed like a guide, leading them through the wilderness, yet now it felt as though they were being pulled by its invisible current toward something far greater than any destination they had imagined. The forest around them, once welcoming, now felt oppressive, as if the trees themselves were watching them, silently judging the choices they had made and those yet to come. The whispers of the wind had grown louder, carrying with it the murmur of the river, its rhythmic flow now echoing in their minds, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The guardian's words had sunk in deeper than either of them had expected. Knowledge, once thought to be a straightforward path, was now a winding road full of uncertainty and consequence. They had come seeking answers, but instead, the river had given them a challenge, a decision that would shape not just their future, but the very course of their lives. The weight of this knowledge pressed on them, heavier than any physical burden. Eamon glanced at Lyra, her face a reflection of his own thoughts, and for the first time, he saw in her eyes the same fear that had settled in his chest. The river had shown them glimpses of their past, of their moments of doubt and weakness, but it was now showing them something far more frightening, an image of their future, one where the choices they made would determine not just their fate, but the fate of all who relied on the river's power. The balance of the world was in their hands, and that knowledge had settled into their bones like a weight too great to bear. They could feel the river calling to them, beckoning them to move forward, but each step forward felt like a leap into the unknown. The water, once a source of solace and guidance, now seemed to be a force of nature beyond their comprehension, one that could sweep them away just as easily as it had guided them. "What do we do now?" Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustle of the trees. Eamon could hear the uncertainty in her voice, and it mirrored his own. There had been a time when they had been certain, when the path ahead had seemed clear, but now everything had changed. They had been swept into the river's current, but the course it was taking them on was no longer one they could see. The fog of the unknown had descended upon them, and with it came the realization that they no longer had the luxury of relying solely on the river. The choice they were about to make would require something more from them, something beyond what they had learned so far. The river had given them a glimpse of the consequences of their choices, but now it was up to them to choose the path they would take. The weight of this responsibility hung in the air like a thunderstorm, crackling with energy. Eamon took a deep breath, steadying himself, and turned to Lyra. "We move forward," he said, his voice strong despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "We don't turn back. We make the choice that feels right, even if we don't know where it will lead." Lyra nodded, her expression softening. There was fear in her eyes, yes, but also something that gave Eamon hope. It was the same quiet determination that had carried them through every trial they had faced together. They had come so far, and they couldn't turn back now. The river had brought them here for a reason, and it was time to trust in the journey. As they took their first steps forward, the forest around them seemed to shift, the trees parting to reveal a hidden path that had been obscured by the mist. It was a path they had not seen before, one that seemed to have appeared just for them, as if the land itself had conspired to guide them forward. The river's current, once distant and faint, now surged louder in their ears, its power growing with every step they took. The air was thick with anticipation, and they could feel the presence of something ancient and powerful surrounding them. The path before them seemed to stretch endlessly, but it was no longer the unknown that filled them with dread. Instead, it was the promise of something greater, something that only the river could reveal. Eamon felt a surge of energy, a newfound sense of clarity that had not been there before. It was as if the very air around them had shifted, as if the world had opened up in a way they had never imagined. They were no longer just travelers on a journey. They were participants in something far more significant than themselves. And with that realization came the understanding that their choices would ripple through time like the waves of the river, forever changing the world around them. "We're ready," Lyra said, her voice steady now, filled with the same quiet strength that had always been there. Eamon smiled, and together they stepped forward into the unknown, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The river had shown them the way, but it was now up to them to decide where it would lead. With each step they took, the path ahead became clearer, not because it was physically laid out before them, but because they had come to understand that. The journey was not about the destination. It was about the choices they made along the way. And with that understanding, they moved forward, ready to embrace whatever the river had in store for them. The flow of the water seemed to echo their resolve, its current steady and unyielding, like the choices they had made and would continue to make. The river had brought them to this point, but it was now their turn to decide what the river's journey would truly mean. And as the mist parted and the path stretched out before them, Eamon and Lyra walked forward, side by side, into the future, ready to face the unknown with a heart full of hope and the courage to meet whatever challenges lay ahead. As the first light of dawn began to stretch across the horizon, casting long golden rays over the land, Eamon and Lyra stood in the clearing, their hearts beating in synchrony with the rhythm of the earth itself. The night had been long filled with the weight of their decision, but now, as the world awoke to the promise of a new day, they were no longer burdened by the uncertainty that had plagued them before. The river, which had guided them with its flowing wisdom, now seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next step in the journey to unfold. The path that lay ahead was as mysterious as the waters themselves, winding through dense forests and across vast, untamed landscapes. But unlike the paths they had traveled before, this one was different. It was not just a physical journey, but a test of their inner strength, a challenge to their very sense of purpose. The air was thick with the scent of fresh earth and dew-kissed grass, and the soft rustling of leaves in the trees provided a natural lullaby that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. The world was alive, filled with the hum of life that thrived in the quiet spaces between moments. But it was the river that called to them most strongly, its waters glimmering in the soft morning light, a shimmering reflection of the choices that lay before them. "Do you feel that?" Lyra asked, her voice barely more than a whisper, as if the air itself might carry her words away. Eamon nodded, his gaze fixed on the flowing water, the current a silent testament to the passage of time. He had felt it too, the subtle shift, the deepening of the bond between them and the land they stood upon. There was something in the air, something that told him their journey was far from over, but the path they had to take was not one they could see with their eyes alone. It was a path that could only be felt, a path that would unfold as they walked it, one step at a time. "It's like the river is calling to us," Eamon said, his voice steady but filled with wonder. "It's as if it knows something we don't, and it wants us to trust it." Lyra looked at him, her eyes searching his face for something in answer, perhaps, or a sign that the uncertainty she felt within herself was shared. But what she saw in his expression was not fear or doubt, but something else. It was the same sense of determination that had carried them through every trial, every hardship they had faced. It was the belief that they were not alone in this, that they had the strength to face whatever lay ahead as long as they did it together. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and then reached out, her hand finding his. The warmth of his touch grounded her, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself to believe that the choices they had made were not in vain. They had come so far, and though the road ahead was unclear, they had the power to shape it with their actions. The choice, as always, was theirs. "Let's go," Lyra said, her voice firm with resolve. "Let's see where the river takes us." Eamon nodded, and together they stepped forward, the weight of the world lifting from their shoulders with each passing moment. The river seemed to welcome them, its gentle murmurs now rising in volume, as though the very current itself was urging them onward. The path ahead wound its way through the dense forest, each step taking them deeper into the heart of the unknown. But with every step, the ground beneath their feet felt more solid, more sure. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the earthy aroma of the forest floor, and the faint hum of the river grew louder, guiding them through the dense trees. The sun, now higher in the sky, filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled patterns of light and shadow upon the forest floor. It was as if the land itself was alive with possibility, and Eamon and Lyra were the ones chosen to bring it to life. As they walked, they shared stories, memories of the past, and the dreams they held for the future. They spoke of the river, of its power and its mysteries, and of the way it had shaped their journey. It had been a constant companion, a guide when they were lost, a source of strength when they were weak. But now they realized it was no longer just a river. It had become a symbol, a representation of the choices they had made, and the ones they would continue to make. The river was no longer just a destination. It was a journey in itself, one that would carry them forward, through challenges, through trials, through moments of doubt and moments of clarity. And with every step, they felt themselves becoming more attuned to its rhythm, more in tune with the land that surrounded them. "We're almost there," Eamon said, his voice filled with quiet confidence. "I can feel it." Lyra smiled, though there was still a hint of uncertainty in her gaze. But as they walked, that uncertainty began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of peace. She had always known, deep down, that the choices they made would shape their future. But now, as the sun bathed the forest in its golden light, she realized that the future was not something to be feared. It was something to be embraced. The river was not just a guide. It was a teacher. It had shown them that the path to their destiny was not always clear, but that with each step, they had the power to create it. And now, as the forest opened up to reveal a wide expanse of water ahead, they knew that they had reached the point of no return. The river had led them here, to this moment, and it was now up to them to choose how they would proceed. They had come so far, and whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. As they stood at the edge of the river, the water flowing endlessly before them, they knew that the journey was far from over. But it was no longer a journey filled with fear or doubt. It was a journey of trust, of faith in themselves and in the land that had brought them here. Together, they stepped forward into the river, ready to embrace the future with open hearts and the courage to face whatever came next. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm amber glow across the land, Eamon and Lyra stood at the water's edge, the river flowing peacefully in front of them. The landscape around them seemed to have transformed, no longer a place of confusion and uncertainty, but one of quiet resolve. The river, which had been a constant guide throughout their journey, now seemed to pulse with an energy of its own, a living entity that understood the weight of the choices they had made. The cool evening breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and blooming flowers, and the soft murmur of the water seemed to blend with the distant calls of night birds. It was a sound that spoke of endings and beginnings, of stories yet to be written. With each step they had taken, the land beneath their feet had grown firmer, as though the earth itself was welcoming them into its embrace, urging them forward into the unknown. But even as they walked, the quiet pull of the river tugged at their hearts, reminding them of the purpose that had driven them to this point, a purpose that now felt clearer than ever before. "We've come so far," Lyra murmured, her voice barely more than a whisper. Eamon glanced at her, his eyes reflecting the same quiet sense of determination that he had seen in her ever since their journey had begun. "Yes," he replied softly, his voice steady but filled with the weight of everything they had experienced. "And now, we are at the beginning of something new." They stood in silence for a moment, both of them feeling the weight of those words, but neither of them feeling burdened by it. They were not the same people who had set out on this journey so long ago. The road had changed them, had shaped them into something stronger, something more certain of their purpose. The river that flowed before them was no longer just a guide. It had become a symbol of the path they had chosen, a reflection of the choices they had made and the future they were about to step into. "Do you think we're ready?" Lyra asked, her gaze fixed on the rippling water, as though she were searching for some answer within its depths. Eamon considered her question carefully, feeling the weight of it settle in his chest. "I don't know if anyone is ever truly ready," he said, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "But we've learned to trust ourselves, to trust each other. That's all we need." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. She knew he was right. They had faced countless challenges, some of them more difficult than they had ever imagined. But they had overcome them because they had learned to trust in their strength, in the bond they shared. And that trust was something they could carry with them into whatever lay ahead. "We've learned so much," she said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "But I feel like we still have so much to learn." Eamon smiled, the faintest hint of warmth in his eyes. "That's the beauty of it," he said. "There's always more to learn, always more to discover. The journey never ends." As he spoke, the water before them seemed to shimmer, as if in agreement with his words. The river, though still, was alive with possibility, its endless current a reminder that life, too, was an ongoing journey. They did not know what lay ahead, nor could they predict the challenges that would come, but they knew they would face them together. The promise they had made to each other, the silent vow to stand by one another no matter what, was something they would honor for the rest of their lives. It was a promise that had been forged in the fires of hardship, tempered by the quiet moments of peace, and sealed in the depths of their shared experiences. The future, once uncertain, now felt full of potential, as if the land itself was offering them a place to build something new. And for the first time in a long while, both Eamon and Lyra felt at peace with the world around them. They had made it this far, and they would continue forward, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. "Shall we?" Eamon asked, his voice gentle, but filled with a quiet strength that resonated deep within Lyra. She turned to him, her heart swelling with emotion, and without a word, she took his hand. Together, they stepped into the river, the cool water swirling around their ankles as they began their journey once more. It was not the end, nor the beginning, but a continuation of everything they had learned and everything they still had to discover. As the river carried them forward, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, bound by the silent promise they had made long ago. The river, which had witnessed their struggles and triumphs, now seemed to offer its silent blessing, its waters carrying them into the unknown with a sense of peace and purpose. With each step they took, the world around them seemed to shift, as if the very landscape was welcoming them into its fold, urging them forward into a future that was theirs to shape. And as the stars began to twinkle above, the night stretching on in its quiet majesty, Eamon and Lyra knew that they had found their place in the world. It was a place of peace, of unity, and of hope, where the journey was just as important as the destination. With the river as their guide and the promise of tomorrow in their hearts, they moved forward into the night, ready to embrace the next chapter of their story, knowing that whatever came their way, they would face it together. The sky above was heavy with dark, swirling clouds, a tempestuous swirl of gray and violet that seemed to press down upon the land. The air was thick with the promise of rain, and the once calm river now churned with a restless energy, as though it too could feel the storm's impending arrival. Eamon and Lyra stood on the riverbank, their eyes fixed on the swirling waters, a shared understanding passing between them. The journey had led them to this moment, to this place where the very world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm to break. There was a stillness in the air, a pause before the chaos, as if nature itself was giving them a moment to reflect, to gather strength for what was to come. The trees around them swayed in the growing wind, their branches creaking and groaning under the strain, but Eamon and Lyra stood firm, rooted to the earth, as if they too were part of the landscape. Their journey had been long, filled with trials and triumphs, but this moment felt different. The storm was not just a force of nature. It was a symbol of everything they had faced and everything they still had to confront. It was the culmination of all their struggles, a reminder that the world could be both beautiful and unforgiving, that even the most peaceful river could be transformed into a raging torrent in the blink of an eye. Do you feel that? Lyra's voice was low, almost a whisper, but the intensity in her eyes matched the force of the storm. Eamon nodded, his gaze never leaving the river. I do. It's like the world is about to change again. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. They had come to understand that change was inevitable at every chapter of their lives had been shaped by forces beyond their control. But this storm felt different. It was not just an external force. It was something that mirrored their internal struggles, their own growing sense of urgency, their need to find a place in a world that seemed increasingly unpredictable and wild. The storm was a reflection of the chaos they had felt within themselves. For so long, they had faced battles, lost allies, and questioned their own purpose. But here, now, standing at the edge of the river, they were forced to confront something much deeper. The storm represented the raw power of nature, the untamed forces that shaped the world around them, and yet it was also a reminder of their own resilience. Despite everything that had happened, despite the challenges that seemed insurmountable, they had survived. And in that survival, they had found something unexpected: strength. The wind howled around them, the first drops of rain beginning to fall in heavy sheets, soaking their clothes and hair. But neither Eamon nor Lyra moved. They stood tall, their eyes focused on the distant horizon, as though the storm were something they had to face head-on. The river, once their guide, now seemed to be in turmoil, its waters rising and falling in unpredictable surges, as though it too was struggling to make sense of the chaos. But even as the storm raged around them, there was a sense of calm between them, a shared understanding that no matter what the world threw at them, they would face it together. In the storm's fury, they found peace. We have to move forward, Eamon said, his voice firm, though it was barely audible over the wind. Lyra turned to him, her expression calm, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that spoke of both fear and determination. "We don't know what lies ahead," she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the swirling waters. "But I know we can face it, as long as we're together." Eamon reached out and took her hand, his grip strong, grounding her in the chaos. "Together," he repeated, his voice steady. And in that single word, they both understood that no matter what happened, they would be ready. The storm was not just a physical force, but a test of their will, of their strength, of their ability to endure and adapt. They had faced so much already, and yet the storm reminded them that there would always be more to face, more challenges to overcome. But it was not the challenges that defined them. It was their response to them. It was how they stood in the face of the storm and refused to back down. The rain began to fall harder now, the storm growing fiercer with each passing moment. But they didn't move. They didn't flinch. The river, with its once calm waters, had become a metaphor for their journey, unstoppable, unpredictable, and yet it flowed with purpose. And in that moment, Eamon and Lyra knew that they too had found their purpose. The storm would pass, as all storms did, but the lessons they had learned, the strength they had gained, would remain. Together, they would face whatever came next. The wind howled and the rain poured, but they stood firm, knowing that they were no longer just survivors. They were fighters, and they would face the heart of the storm with the quiet resolve that had carried them this far. The river, once a guide, now stood as a symbol of their own journey, a journey that had been difficult, full of uncertainty and struggle, but one that had shaped them into something stronger than they had ever imagined. The storm would pass, and with it, a new chapter would begin. But for now, in the heart of the storm, they stood, unwavering, ready for whatever came next. The village, once alive with the sounds of daily life, had quieted under the shadow of an impending reckoning. The steady hum of the river was now a distant memory, replaced by a silence that seemed to stretch endlessly through the streets. It was a stillness that hung heavy in the air, a palpable weight on every heart and mind. People went about their routines with mechanical precision, their movements slow and deliberate, as if they were each carrying the burden of something unseen, yet deeply felt. The sun, once a warm and inviting presence, now cast an indifferent light over the land, its rays weak and unyielding, unable to break through the thick fog of uncertainty that had settled over the settlement. The distant cries of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the soft splashes of water as fish leapt from the river were all but drowned out by the heavy thrum of anxiety that pulsed in the very soil beneath their feet. It was a quiet unlike any other they had known, the kind that comes before a storm, the kind that comes before change. In the silence, even the most mundane tasks seemed more significant, as if each action carried the weight of something larger, something that could no longer be ignored. As the villagers moved through their day, their eyes often met in passing, a brief, wordless exchange of understanding. No one spoke of the tension that had settled among them, but it was there, in every glance, every hesitant step. They had seen it coming for days, weeks even, but now that it was upon them, they could no longer deny the shift in the air. Hey, river, once a source of life and comfort, now felt like a vast, indifferent force, its currents flowing without concern for the lives it carried along its banks. The fishermen who once cast their nets with skill and confidence now stood by the water's edge, their eyes fixed on the rippling surface, waiting for anything that would break the silence and give them a direction to move forward. The children, who had once played with reckless abandon, now huddled together in small groups, their laughter stilled, their energy drained by the heavy weight of the world they felt pressing down on them. In the heart of the village, the elders, gathered in quiet corners, their hushed conversations barely audible over the rustle of the leaves in the trees. They had seen times like this before, moments of change and uncertainty that threatened to swallow the peaceful existence they had known for so long. But this time, something felt different. There was no immediate threat, no invader, no famine, no flood. It was something more insidious, something that crept under their skin and made them question everything they thought they knew about their way of life. There was a fear that, despite their best efforts, they were standing on the edge of something they could not control, something that would change their world forever. The village square, once a lively place of trade and interaction, had become eerily empty, the market stalls abandoned, their goods left untouched. A few brave souls still walked the paths, heads down, eyes focused on the ground, as if by not acknowledging the vast emptiness around them, they could stave off the inevitable. The dogs that had once roamed the streets in packs, barking and chasing each other, now lay still in the dust, their eyes dull, their energy sapped. It was as if the very spirit of the village had been drained, leaving behind only the barest hint of life, like a flickering candle struggling against the wind dot as the day wore on. The tension grew thicker, settling in the bones of the villagers, like a disease that refused to be shaken off. The sun, now low in the sky, cast long shadows over the land, stretching the village into a dark silhouette. It was in this moment, with the light fading and the air growing cooler, that the decision was made. The elders, once divided in their approach to the future, now gathered in secret, their faces grim, their words few. They had spent hours deliberating, consulting with one another, searching for a solution that would preserve their way of life. But deep down, they knew that the world they had known was slipping away, and no amount of counsel or prayer could hold back the tide of change. As the night deepened, the village by the river seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable conclusion to unfold. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silver sheen over the landscape, and the river, which had once felt like a comforting companion, now appeared cold and unfeeling. It was as if the world itself had paused, caught between the past and the future, unsure of which path to take. The village had lived in harmony with nature for generations, but tonight, that harmony felt fragile, as if it could slip away at any moment. The villagers gathered, each person standing on the precipice of an uncertain tomorrow, their eyes cast downward, unable to meet the gaze of their neighbors. There was no denying it now, the change they had feared, the one that had lingered, in the back of their minds for so long, had come, and it was irreversible. The elders had spoken in hushed tones, their voices heavy with the weight of the decision they had made. It was the right choice, they assured one another, though doubt lingered like a shadow. They could not deny the necessity of action, but the cost weighed heavily on their hearts. In the center of the village, the fire that had once burned brightly in the hearths of every home now flickered low, casting dancing shadows on the faces of those who had gathered. They had done all they could to hold on to the past, to preserve the traditions, the values, the way of life they had known for so long. But deep down, they all knew that this was the end. The world around them had changed, and they could not stop it. There would be no more long, lazy afternoons by the river, no more carefree days spent working the fields or gathering by the fire. The village, as it had been, would no longer exist. The river, once a symbol of life and abundance now, felt like an indifferent force, its waters flowing steadily on, oblivious to the turmoil that had shaken the hearts of those who had lived beside it. Yet in this moment of loss and uncertainty, there was a strange sense of peace. The villagers, despite their sorrow, stood together, united in their shared experience, in their mutual understanding that the end was not the end, but a new beginning. They had faced challenges before, and they would face them again. The world might have changed, but they had not. The values that had sustained them for generations, resilience, community, and the quiet strength of the river remained intact. As the final embers of the fire flickered and died, the villagers looked to the river one last time, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that they had done all they could. The past was gone, and the future was uncertain, but they had faced a moment together. And in that shared experience, there was something undeniably powerful, something that would carry them forward into whatever lay ahead. With the river as their witness, the village embraced the night, and in the stillness that followed, they found the peace they had been searching for. It was not a peace born of certainty, but of acceptance, an acceptance that, no matter how the world changed, they would always be a part of it. And in that knowledge, they found the strength to move forward together into the unknown. The river flowed on, its steady current a reminder that life would continue, even in the face of change. And as the villagers began to walk away from the banks, their hearts lighter than before, they knew that, though the world had changed, they had not. They would carry the river's lesson with them, no matter how fast the current, no matter how rough the waters, they would endure. They always had.